Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to SATAL Week 19. This week picks Lock on Greece versus the Iranian Air Force, or IRIAF. I'm your host, Moltar, here with my co-host, Alex, also known as Iron Mike. How are you doing, Alex?
Hey, Moltar, I'm doing great, and it's a real pleasure and honor to be on the stream again, and to have a Heat Blur giveaway later on. Swither will be joining us, aka Daniel Malmquist, or basically the other way around. And I'd also like to welcome Microvax, RV Microvax. My good friend Simon here is gonna co-commentate as well. And hello. I hope all of you will enjoy the stream.
I love Microvax's intro after everything.
Yeah.
But guys, as per usual, please let me know if there's anything going on with the sound, video quality, or anything of that nature. We want to make this as good as possible. And Mike, I'm sorry if I missed it, but did we touch on the 08 Squadron being present for the interview afterwards?
Yeah.
So afterwards, guys, we have a couple interviews. I know Iron Mike touched on the Heat Blur interview. We're going to talk about possibly some flight model stuff, but we're mainly going to focus on the Jester AI. We're going to do a giveaway from them. But we also have the 08 Squadron, which is a Spanish or Latin America squadron that focuses on, from what I understand, bringing a lot of and helping people bring brevity and stuff into the multiplayer community, and they really help a lot of people where English isn't their primary language, English is a second language, to better allow them to assimilate into the multiplayer community of DCS. So we're going to talk to them for a bit. We're going to have Heat Blur on at the end, and we'll go from there. But for right now, we're going to focus on Lock on Greece and IRIAF, and we see these guys taxiing to the runway. We'll switch camera views here, and we'll get this underway.
Yeah, it's really good to have the 08 here today. As you all guys know, for us in Heat Blur, community work is one of our top priorities. We couldn't be more happy with the community that we got in DCS. I mean, all of you guys are simply amazing. And we would like to give also a little bit of a platform to, let's say, slightly marginalized communities that the majority of the English-speaking community might not know, unless you're a Spanish-speaking pilot or something. And also that gives basically a home to people who are not English-speaking in the first place. So there's not only the Spanish-speaking community, you have German-speaking communities, all sorts of, you have Serbian squadrons, Bulgarian squadrons, whatnot, you know, Russian squadrons, Asian squadrons, Indian squadrons, the ITGC. Today we have Lock on Greece, which is a Greek community, versus the IRIAF, the Iranian community. So all those people, they contribute so much, and what the 08 does as well is that they basically train in English so that their guys who are Spanish speaking can participate in multiplayer events. But I don't want to take away too much up front. We will hear that from themselves, so stay tuned. It's, I think, going to be a very amazing stream today.
All right, so we see the guy. Go ahead, Micro, I'm sorry.
Training in English, that's a pretty big commitment. Didn't know that.
Yeah, so basically what they do, but again, we will let them explain it later themselves. But they have a Spanish-speaking home for people who are Spanish speakers, and then they train brevity in English, and I think that's really great, because not only give they a home to Spanish-speaking guys in DCS, but they give them also a door towards you know, entering multiplayer events, so of course held in English.
So let's get back to the match real quick. Let's talk about what everybody's flying. We've got Lock on Greece versus the Iranian Air Force. Looks like Lock on Greece is really, looks like everyone is flying primarily the F-15. We have a Singleton J-11 coming from Lock on Greece, or GR, and then we have a Singleton C-27 coming from the Iranian Air Force, but we've got 5 F-15s on both sides. So we're going to see lots of actives being slung at one another, lots of Bs since the C is banned. Very few R-77s since we have only the Singleton J-11, and we'll have to see if anybody's taking ETs. How do you guys see, given what we're seeing from module selection, how do you guys see this playing out here? Any decisive advantages or disadvantages? I mean, primarily both teams are taking the F-15, but is the J-11 going to give anybody an advantage? Do we think that R-77 is going to play any type of role? We know it's really only effective under 10 kilometers, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, he has only one R77 loaded, and I think that's actually the reasonable choice. Like, it's a very last-ditch missile, I feel. Like, at short range, it can maneuver very, very aggressively, but it, at the same time, runs out of energy really fast, so... Yeah, more nuisance, not so much like a great advantage, I think.
Well, here's a question up front. Do both teams utilize GCI today?
I believe both teams are using LOT ATC, yes.
Good, so, but it's still, you know, the main advantage of the JA11 here will be the data link, right? So, in addition to what they have with LOT ATC and the extremely powerful radar of the F-15, the J11 at some point, you know, what it can do is snuck down into the valley, be lost by its own GCI, but still see what the GCI would still see, you know, so that is the one advantage. And the other advantage, I would say, is simply in VVR, if it comes to a dogfight with the turning ability of the J11, as well as, you know, the R73s, and of course the ET, as we've seen in so many SATAL matches so far. You know, the ET has been the prime killer, I think, in most of the matches. So this time we will have only 2 ETs per round, if they bring any. I haven't looked at the loadouts yet. I'm still loading into the game, but those, I think, would be the only advantages that today could be taken from the J11.
Yeah, both flankers have 2 ETs each.
Well, speaking of the ETs, it is overcast today, and we've seen how the ET, given how it's modeled, how IR seekers are modeled in DCS, how effective it is when it's able to shoot through cloud cover when you're not able to see that smoked motor come off of the Su-27 or the J11.
Yeah, so it's coated, and but what I've seen, you know, is those. I mean, if you know that the ET is there, and we figure that out quite often, right? I mean, and if you know what to do just a little bit, then you'll be able to defeat it. The ETs that have gotten so many people is those that were basically just hanging in the air, you know, looking for a target, and somebody was unaware of that, burning towards it, and got unlucky. For example, I remember Mogas having this unluck in the match that we had against China, and so on. So, you know, those ETs, they can always be that surprising element where you would not expect them, and then you catch it, and you get very unlucky with that.
Yeah, I think we've talked about it a lot in the past, and I think you touched on this briefly, is you got to expect that it's coming. You have to flare, you have to, even if you don't see it, you have to expect that there's that hidden AIM-9, that R73 that you didn't see even though it's smoked, or that long-range ET. You've got to drop flares just in case somebody launched it, because it's IR, you don't get the launch warning like you do from the radar-guided missiles or when 120 goes pitbull. And I know you've talked about that a lot in the past, Iron Mike, but we got to keep hammering that into people, because we see it week in and week out. People getting hit by IR-guided missiles that they don't expect or don't see.
Yeah, and mostly that we're also dead by definition already. You know, that means that ET was just really parked in the air, and it was rather the guy who flew into the ET than the ET who flew into the guy, if you know what I mean. And that's not only flaring and defending it when you're like in an engagement directly, but also pre-engagement when you're set up against an J11 or an Su-27. Don't just fly straight, don't be in afterburners all the time. What I do, for example, is every now and then, if I need the speed, I just go full idle and back full throttle, make a little jinx, you know, don't fly just a straight line. All these things help to defend those very long dead ETs that are just hanging there in the air waiting for somebody to fly into them.
Yeah, like a double crank, like while you fire, like go one direction and then just somewhere around the middle of the intercept, just sharply turn 90 degrees to the other side can like really greatly reduce the chance of any missile hitting, but especially like dead IR ones.
I gotta give you a shout out real quick to VVJT Splash for subbing to the channel. Thanks, man. Really appreciate it. The continued support that you guys provide and all the followers that you guys give just kind of, it shows us that you guys have an interest in this. We may suck at casting it, But you guys have somewhat of an interest, so I'm glad you guys are enjoying what you see. Sorry for cutting in there, Microvax, but go ahead.
Absolutely, we appreciate every viewer. It is, you know, we do this for you guys, and it is really great to see that so many people show interest in that. And to connect to what you said, you're doing a great job, Malta. So don't worry about that. The streams are amazing, the setup is amazing. Everybody at Heatblur, by the way, is of the same opinion. We couldn't be more happy of how the 51st is going on about this.
I'm glad at least Heatblur is enjoying themselves. And real quick, before we get going, that gives me headway into something that I need to do. We need to talk about our sponsors real quick and everybody that's donating and doing things for the channel. So we'll start out with our second tier sponsors, Lot ATC. And guys, I'm going to change the screen real quick so you can see what we're talking about. Lot ATC, for those that you don't know, provides real-world or as close to real-world AWACS and GCI support for in-game DCS as you can. 104 servers now supporting it. I saw that Maverick put it in. So I know the SF guys have done some testing, and I think you can use Lot ATC now on the 104th server. TACView, for their generous contributions to the winners. The winners will get advanced licenses for the squadrons. If they win SATAL, I think it's first and second place, gets 6 licenses. Don't quote me on that, but TACView, if you don't use it, amazing tool for debriefing and briefing for that matter, on flights and getting some more data out of just kind of guessing how you flew. Buddy Fox, this is a big one. As of recently, I've just kind of given you guys a hint on what they do and stuff. Buddy Fox, he's based out of Finland. He's doing a real-world UFC. You can see it right there. It's essentially a button box, but it's the A10 UFC. In a couple weeks, I'll be giving one of those away, so make sure you stay tuned to that, and along with a couple Teflon rings for the Warthog stick. Splash One Gaming, if you guys aren't part of this community, join the Discord. You should see one of the timers come up with the Discord link to join the Discord. They also do the Merge, which, if you guys haven't been to the Merge, it's an awesome place to keep track of stats, schedules, and everything for anything pertaining to SATAL. And of course, Heatblur, for their monstrous contributions. It's really a first in DCS history that we have this amount of a prize pool. Without them, without Iron Mike, without all of their support and their awesome community commitment, this wouldn't happen. For those of you who don't know, first and second place of SATAL gets 6 modules apiece, and the winner walks away with 500 euros. We haven't seen anything like this in DCS yet. This is big. I'm excited about it. I hope Heatblur's excited about it. I think the community is excited about it. But shout outs to the sponsors, guys, and without them, this wouldn't be possible. So back to the show, and we'll get this underway because I think they're getting ready to take off. Iron Mike, you got anything you want to add, or
I think we have a problem.
Before we get the show on the road?
Just that we're really excited, and it is a real pleasure for Heatblur to be doing this sponsorship. And like I said, you know, community work has priority for us, a very high priority, and it is simply a pleasure. And, it couldn't be better.
Hey, wake up.
We have a problem. GR already took off.
Well, I don't know why they took off, but okay. It's fine. They're not that far ahead.
Yeah, so that's a little premature launch. I didn't want to say the other word there. But that's fine. I mean, in the end, that's, yeah, some, I would say 50 nautical miles advantage. That is if the other guys make it off the ground quickly.
The circle's big enough that it shouldn't play any type of issue in any of this, so I'm not entirely worried about it.
Yeah, I think we can forgive them that. They probably just saw the ready, and then they posted the go themselves, as I see in the chat. So for them, that was the launch go. And the IRF was waiting for Yoko, as they should, but yeah.
So real quick, Madkin says, what was the ATC thing that was mentioned? Madkin, it's Lot ATC, as Splash says. It's a third-party application that runs essentially as a module for DCS, and it gives you better radar modeling, and really it's just a better GCI AWACS utility than what's in-game. It is much better and closer to real life. So we're watching IRIAF depart from Sanaki, and I think it's 5 F-15s and a Singleton C-27. Still pretty low. I haven't seen them climb at all yet.
Yeah, that's because they took off with a little delay, and from the Greek side, what I can see already is that basically they're forming up in 3 2-ships, where 2 2-ships are leading up front, and then you have 1 2-ship trailing up back. Something that we have seen a couple of times by the Greeks already. We will see if they make those splits they did. Last time it went a little bit unlucky for them because they split apart so far that basically they got flanked and then they got separated by the main group. What we've seen, I think, in SATAL in general is that if people stick together, they have higher chances of surviving in the guerrilla group as if they split up into 2 more flights. But also, for example, a very good example when it works was in the China versus 104th match, where one of the Chinese guys went very low and flanked all our group around in the valley below and then came up short and basically shot a couple of guys in our face by surprise. So sometimes that works, but you still need that good guerrilla group in order to give you good cover and to have a good fallback.
Well, I agree that sometimes it works, but it takes a huge amount of discipline to make sure you don't overstretch yourself and the rest of your teammates, and that you don't just fly in and die, because if you die, the rest of your team is at a serious disadvantage, because when it's only a 6v6, every life matters. I mean, if you die and the other team, it's now a 5v6, that puts your team and the rest of your teammates at a serious disadvantage going into that fight, even though it's just 1 pilot.
Absolutely, and the other thing is, of course, that you need a very good communication and team coordination so that you know if something goes south, where do I have to run to? We've seen that a lot also in some SATAL games, matches, that a couple of guys basically were running in the wrong direction, okay, because they got disorientated. It's very easy to get disorientated in the fray when everything gets mixed up in the furball, and if you then run into the wrong direction, that means you're running towards the bandit and you separate yourself even more. So you have to have a very good situational awareness if you go for those kind of flanking tactics or separation tactics. The SA anyway is the non plus ultra for anything air-to-air wise, and as well air-to-ground wise, of course, but especially in air-to-air. So, you know, the better your situational awareness is, the more likely you are to succeed with those kind of separating tactics, and the worse your situational awareness is, the more likely you are going to end up in a very hairy situation.
Well, and speaking of situational awareness, it is overcast today, and I think the cloud deck is set at 3,000 meters. We could see that cloud deck, especially since I think this fight, if we look at the F10 map, is going to be taking place over the mountains, play a role in how this fight progresses as the fight intensifies and the altitudes decrease as the pilots exchange that altitude for more energy as the fights get closer and closer together. We could see some lawn darting because we know that the cloud deck is in, or the mountains are in some of that cloud decks. We'll have to see how, A, the situational awareness plays out, and if, B, the pilots are able to stay disciplined enough to realize where the floor is, where the actual terrain is, to make sure that they don't fly into it as they're coming back through the clouds if they do need to.
Yeah, so, you know, if you have VFR rules when flying a match like that, it's of course much easier because you can use landmarks. For example, I know that towards the bandit, the coast is supposed to be on my right, and when I'm flying away from the bandit, the coast is supposed to be on my left. Now, if you have a cloud cover, then you have a mix of VFR rules if you stay below, and a mix of instrument flight rules if you mix into the cloud deck. So navigation-wise, you really have to be on your toes in order to know where you're going, what you're doing, and where you will end up. A little heads up maybe on the IRF. What we can see here is they're forming up in 3 2-ships with the flanker lagging behind a little bit, which is always a good idea to have the data link guy lagging a little bit. But basically what they're doing is forming a wall while still being very nicely together. Their separation is about 3 miles in between the flights, so that is a very nice tactical spreads in between the single ships. And with the Greeks, what we see is they have as well a tactical spread with the 2 lead 2 and 3 ships, and then a single F-15 is lagging behind for about 6 to 8 nautical miles.
And then if we go over here and look at what Lock on Greece is doing, we can see them separating now into more defined elements. We have the southern 2 ship of Marine and SAF, and then a singleton trailing behind. He's separated by the main other two elements by about 7 nautical miles. We'll have to see how that plays out. It's not a Su-27 or any flanker type, so there's no data link. We'll have to see what type of role Hyper plays in this particular scenario. And then we have a 3-ship of Panther, Aeolus, and Officer of 3 F-15. So the flanker of SAF is with Marine in that 2-ship. And they're now taking an eastern offset, heading into the mountains. Maybe they're trying to drag into the higher terrain. We'll have to see how this unfolds.
They're also cranking very early, which generally is not a bad idea. But cranking, of course, also takes, you know, it sets you up for an offensive and defensive maneuver at the same time. But now they swung back in towards the bandit, so they're not utilizing on that crank they made initially. They just displaced themselves a little bit into the higher terrain. And it is not such a bad idea because it basically puts pressure on your enemy when you fire on them when you go defensive with a low cloud cover and the high mountains just below them. So likewise, of course, it puts also pressure on you. You have to be on your toes, like we said, that you do not break through the clouds and directly into the mountain. That is a very unlucky thing.
Separation between the two teams is now down to 25 nautical miles, so we should be seeing our first missile launches of the match here coming soon.
We can now see that the right 2-ship of the IRF is breaking off, and the first missiles have been launched by the IRAF, by Falcon, and I think by either Hawk or AW. 2 120Bs are on their way, and here comes the counter 120Bs and 127ER from the Greek squadron. The lead 120B does look a little bit dangerous for Officer.
That could be trouble. He's defending really late.
Yeah, that was... He didn't even defend it. He just did... No, he was just lucky.
He got really lucky. So lots of missiles being launched in exchange here. And we see Hawk getting way deep into the shit here with Officer. It looks like he's merged now. But he does see him.
Yeah, that was too close for the AIM-120, so let's hope that he switches to the AIM-9s because he's in a really advantaged position now. He got really lucky that he didn't get clamped by the red guys here, by the Greeks, and now he's basically chasing Officer. But Officer got aware of the fact, oh no, he crashed.
He did crash.
Yeah, and that's what we said, you know, you have to be on your toes with that cloud cover. You have to be aware of the mountains below you, or you will pay the price. So that is a very unlucky, of course. We prefer that people get killed rather than they kill themselves. No, it was actually, So Challenger killed Officer with an AIM-120B. This is just a desync problem we have sometimes in DCS. We do not see the missiles correctly, but he did get killed. Which of course I prefer to see that somebody does the job in order to kill somebody. I don't like to see somebody die, but even less so, I don't like to see somebody die by a mistake, right?
So now we see Marine getting pressed by multiple IRIAF players, and Marine is now falling back to what looks to be Hyper, and I think we lost another player. SAF, so Hawk took SAF down and Challenger took Officer down, so we're down to a 6v4 with 4 players for
Panther here is in big trouble. Look at Panther.
He is in big trouble. There's an ER coming. There it is.
And he got killed by Raptor. Very good show by Raptor. That ET unfortunately wasn't necessary anymore. And again, you can see here the IRIAF, although they have this split, are much more cohesive as a unit, while the Greeks fall apart a little bit here. They got clamped, they got separated, and they got basically pressured on by the IRAF through that. Hawk just got lucky here, dodging that AIM-120, and Challenger here will have to defend now, or Aeolus will get him. Marine has turned back and has shot on him. That is very dangerous to have a Fox 3 shot while you're being... while your bandit is being chased.
Challenger's in a world of trouble here. He's got a lock on Grease Guy all over his 6, and he eats an AIM-9, so he's going down. You know, something that we've realized here over the past couple weeks is that missiles are doing a significant amount more damage than they did in the past, and we do see Marine go down from a 120.
And which I think was Aeolus, and
AW just cleaning house down there to the southwest.
Very strong show by the IRAF here, and now we have Hyper left as the sole bandit. He's been fired on by an AIM-9. and just missed. He's merged with Hawk. I think that's an engagement. We can look out how Hyper will do at the very end here. He's been hit, but he's still flying. Oh, now he's going guns. And hope that he doesn't crash here. He's got really high AO. He ejected, yeah, and that's it. So the first round goes to the IRIAF and deserved so. That was a very quick match.
Man.
Much quicker than we said.
That was really quick.
What do you think, Microvex?
Yeah, it was very Napoleonic warfare. Like, it was very in close and just, yeah, the IRIAF really stuck together pretty well in those two ships, and like, two ships is really like, two ships are goddamn useful if you can keep them through the fight, because like, yeah, if the enemy doesn't use two ships, then you basically pretty much always have an option to at least withdraw or win the engagement. Because you just have that second element. If it's not engaged, you can just do so much. It's like so flexible.
Well, guys, real quick, they said they don't need to land, so I'm going to go ahead and restart the server. I'm going to throw these guys into an intermission video, and gives us time to get everything back in order. And we can talk about what we think the teams needed to do better, what both teams did well, here in a few minutes when we come back. So, guys, all you viewers out there, I'll see you guys in a couple minutes. Another fan video. Enjoy. See you guys in a couple. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Awesome video done by Adrian Comparzo. If you guys haven't seen his work, he's got a few other videos. We saw one of his for the intro of the stream. Saw his second one. I think he's got a third one that I'll show at a later date. But if you guys want to check out the rest of his stuff, go ahead and click on the YouTube channel link that I linked in chat. And we'll get back to what we were talking about earlier. I think we said we'd touch on what both teams did well, what we think both teams probably should improve on, and really overall how that round one went of this Week 19 match between Lock On Greece and IRIAF. So, Iron Mike, I'll let you shoot off first, Micro, follow up, and then I'll bat third, I guess. So, go ahead.
Yeah, so with the Greek guys, I would advise, you know, what I've been advising over the past matches as well, and that is avoid separation at any costs, because they tend to get a little bit disorientated through that. They tend to lose each other, and they tend to get clamped by the enemy team, which is a very dangerous situation, and there's simply no way you can fight out of that unless you get a little bit lucky as well. So if you have somebody coming at you on your front, you have somebody coming at your 6, you have somebody on your 9 and on your 3, where are you gonna go? You can either go up and down, and as we know, you know, in an air-to-air fight, that does not really help often, unless you can really slip away with some terrain cover. But that, I think, is Greece's biggest problem, is they have always this idea of kind of separating and, you know, putting one apart to try to flank and so on, but it does not really work. So my advice to them would be stay more together. For the IRIAF, I have to say there's not much I would add. I mean, in terms, they stayed together very well. They got they were cohesive as a unit. They fought together, and they also you know, utilized on the mistakes of the enemy. That means whenever one of them got separated and clamped, they basically picked them off one by one, which is very good. There was one situation where Hawk was pushing a little bit too far at the very beginning. He got lucky there that he didn't get spotted by the other Greek guys. That would have been an easy prey for those guys, but they went not RTB, I'm sorry, they went defensive and extended early on, so they did not utilize on Hawk's mistake. But other than that, I think IRF performed really well here and did the best they could out of the situation the Greek guys presented to them. What do you think, Micro?
Yeah, overall I pretty much agree with your assessment. The thing, I really have to agree, I think the Greek squadron really got pretty much lost in the combat. Basically, I think it looked more like 6 single ships more or less, and the thing is, GCI can help to mitigate that. The thing is though that the fight was very enclosed, and the bearings and stuff change so fast if you basically have this engagement which takes like place at like 12 people inside a circle with a radius of like, let's say 10 miles. It's just not viable. It's just like the delay is too long. If you stretch out the fight over like a wider front line and basically make GCI basically your air operations center like from the start and basically rely on that, it works much better. But like in such a close fight, and we also had the issue with the cloud cover, it's, yeah, GCI can't save you in that situation. So yeah, I think that's pretty much what caught the Greeks off guard there. For the IRIAF, I would say really nice to see those 2 ships sticking together that well. Like we pretty much had like at least two ships like sticking together until the end of the fight. That's as said, like if you can do that, if you have the SA to stay with your wingman, that gives you a lot of flexibility. What would have liked to see is like be a little bit more dynamic and don't just do a wall, but like it worked. So yeah, I don't know, can't really fault them that much.
Wall is great if it works, because it really breaks the enemy if the enemy breaks, you know what I mean? And they broke in that sense. And you made an excellent point there, MicroX. GCI basically is rendered useless if you stick so close together and are not able to separate your bandits, stretch them out, because the speed the GCI would have to give you the vectors and the snap vectors and so on is something usually a GCI cannot keep up with anymore. For one guy, yes, but not for 6 people. So that's, I think, a very excellent point you made there, MicroX.
So for me to bat this cleanup and kind of bring this home, all valid points, and I completely agree with everything you said. I think that, to me, the biggest thing that I saw there for both teams was a little bit of a lack of discipline. I think the Iranian Air Force did really well with sticking with their 2 ships, as both Alex and Simon both said. However, I'm going to touch on the discipline again. There was a big overextension. I think they got in too deep, and Hawk initially was really lucky that somebody from the Grease Squadron didn't see him and put 2 up his tailpipe. So there's a little bit of an overextension. I'd like to see both teams fly a bit more defensive, maybe conserve a bit more on the missiles. We saw a lot of missiles being exchanged in the beginning of that engagement. And honestly, when missiles, even AIM-120s, since all of us have a pretty good understanding that they're not modeled quite to real-life specifications or what we all believe them to be modeled, they don't have quite the range that we'd like them to have, that firing from 20 to 25 nautical miles, you're at the very edge, even outside of a 120's effective range. And that's a C for that matter, let alone a B, which has a higher induced drag than the C does because of the amount of G that it pulls when it's turning, so it bleeds energy considerably faster. So a lot of those missiles that were fired at the beginning, if a bandit goes defensive, are going to be almost completely and utterly useless by the time they reach the bandit, because they're going to be out of energy, they're not going to be able to turn, and the bandit's just going to fly away unscathed and unharmed, and you're going to be down 1 or 2 missiles that you're going to be able to use at a later date. So for me, it's discipline. I think Simon touched on situational awareness and maybe an over-reliance on GCI. And Alex, what did you say, going back, that you'd like to see?
I'd like to see the Greek guys be a little bit more cohesive and sticking together.
Yes.
And concerning the IRF, I totally agree with you. In terms of what Microx said for the GCI, that is good what they did to get that separation so that the GCI can really sort them nicely on their bandits, but they extended in the wrong direction. And the best example, I think, was Hawk, who just pushed so far that he ended up basically behind enemy lines. And he was really lucky that the Greek guys didn't, you know, capitalize on this mistake.
Yes.
So I absolutely agree. You know, there could be more cohesion and there could be more awareness in the fact of how do I extend and how do I separate my flights so that GCIA can help me, but B, at the same time, I do not end up on the wrong side of the fence.
Funny thing is, I think in the past, Hawk, like, I think it's not the first time that Hawk did go in so deep. I at this point, I'm not even sure if it's an error anymore. Like, it's sure a risky move, but like, I see a pattern here.
That is easily also being kill locked, you know. I mean, as we always said, and that's a term, you know, you have 2 terms that get very dangerous for a pilot in air-to-air situations, or let's say for a virtual pilot. I don't want to speak for the real-life guys, but for a virtual pilot and what we see on servers and events and so on, time and time again, there's 2 things. One thing is that you get task saturated. That means you're simply overloaded and you break off your communication.
Quick, Alex, sorry to interrupt. I just want to make sure that people understand that that round went really quick, and it was definitively won by IRIAF, but I don't want anybody to think that Greece or any of these pilots aren't up to snuff. If you've never flown in an event like this, it is, and this is, I think, where Iron Mike Alex is going, it is overwhelming, and it's very easily to get overwhelmed with situational awareness, with comms. Your heart is going a million miles an hour, because if you die, you're dead. It's not like on 104th or any of the Airquake servers. It's like as close to real life as we can get. If you die, you are no longer effective for the rest of your team. You're supposed to log out immediately afterwards, and it is overwhelming. I mean, for the best pilots in the world, you make a shit ton of mistakes just because of how overwhelmed your senses are and how much work you as a pilot are having to do. And
exactly.
So I'll just wanted to iterate that. Sorry for interrupting, Alex, but I want to make sure that people understand that this is not like you going up and taking a joyride and releasing some AIM-120s and then flying home. This is balls to the wall.
And that's exactly where the kill lock comes from, yeah? Because you're really so focused on killing that guy that, and at the same time you get task saturated and you just forget about so many aspects of your flight. And it takes a lot of experience and a lot of years of flying, really years, not months, not weeks, but years of flying, in order to get so calm in such a stressy situation. And you have to been there a lot of time. So, by the way, I think I overheard that airquake comment there. But that's totally fine. I mean, the thing is that you do get under huge pressure in events, and the pressure and the stakes for you and your team are so much higher than being on any normal server, airquake or not, and it just you know, puts you into that tunnel vision, and that's where the kill lock happens. You just see the bandit, you think you can kill him, and you go for it, and you forget that at the same time you might be putting yourself in a dangerous position. And I've said this so many times, you know, I have huge respect, doesn't matter the level of what they're flying, just for everybody participating in this, because you give yourself exposure, you go public with it, you expose your own flying, and it takes a lot of balls, I might say, you know, to just take part in that. So I have huge respect for anybody, and it doesn't matter the outcome of the match, it doesn't matter whether you win or not, you will learn something in participating, and you will have fun no matter what. So anybody who's still thinking and who's still on the edge of jumping, should I participate in multiplayer events or not? Am I good enough for that? Forget about being good enough. Just participate, take part, and you will get so much better than if you do not participate. So big kudos to everybody who's flying in SATAL this year.
Oh, I in no way, Alex, was trying to make that comment on 104th or anything.
No, that's totally fine.
That was just how people fly on the server, and it's you have a different mindset where if you get shot down on really most multiplayer servers, that you're going to be able to come back and do it again. But an event like this, if you're dead, there's no coming back.
But that airquake situation, you know, and sometimes I agree, sometimes it is just airquakey, because what do people do on the server? They get airborne, you know, they full afterburner to bullseye, they shoot somebody down, get shot down themselves, and then they respawn and they repeat it over and over again. But on the same time, it is a good environment to learn air-to-air, because basically you're always in a chaos. And mastering the chaos is very beneficial then when you get in the chaos situation in a verbal in an event, because if you do not have that experience of flying on the server on a regular basis, and it doesn't matter, because you know, on any server, however the mission layout is, it depends on how the pilots fly. You on the 104th can find both types of pilots, right? Those who really run towards bullseye, shoot, kill, get shot, and respawn. And then you have those who do escorts, who you know, fly caps for the strikers and so on. It depends very much on the people and who's online on TeamSpeak, who's online on SRS, and what kind of teammates you will find, because on a 24/7 server, of course, the teams are exchanging on a constant basis, so you cannot expect to always have those reliable teammates with you all the time. But the more realistic you fly, the more chances you also have to survive in this very chaotic airquake-ish environment on such servers like ours, for example. So I think it's a very good training environment, you know, to get to get your situational awareness peeled out. By the way, the teams have taken off.
Yeah, I noticed that. It looks like Lock on Greece was giving the go, go, go for takeoff. So one thing that I just thought of while we're watching these teams depart, and I think this is significant in how that last round played out, was IRIAF, if I remember correctly, had a significant altitude advantage over Greece going into that initial engagement. I think if memory serves, IRIAF came in at around Angels 40, while Lock on Greece was somewhere in the vicinity of Angels 20. And
look what they're doing now, though. You see the IRF, they're flying below the flight cover, cloud cover, and just now they started climbing.
I think they were rejoining. I think they may have been a little bit separated.
But you're right, you know, I mean, we have two currencies in air-to-air. One is speed and the other one is altitude, and you can only buy one by trading the other. That means if you want to get altitude, you need to trade speed, and if you want to get speed, you need to trade altitude. The outcome of trading those both currencies is energy, and you need a high amount of energy in order to have a good launch portfolio for your missile and a good defensive portfolio as well. So, you know, when you're at 30,000 feet, you have much more time to perform a good split S and defensive maneuver than if you would be at 2,000 feet, because at certain ranges, when you pull into a split S, you simply will die. So, and I think that, you know, it's good that it didn't happen. Initially, we thought that one of the guys crashed. That is always very sad to see if somebody dies by a mistake rather than by fighting it out. As much as I hear everybody, as much as I hate to see anybody die, but you know, if you give yourself the altitude advantage and the energy advantage, you have a better chance of survival. That is a simple fact.
Microvex is happy about statements about high altitude and speed.
Yeah, not that high, Microvex. Okay?
Yes, that's high.
So Nesano says, this is the first match I've watched online. Are FC3 planes always used, or are some clickable modules used? Now, this is something that I want to make clear to people. I don't believe as a pilot that FC3, flying an FC3 like the F-15 or the C-27 makes you a worse pilot. Once you get in the air, yes, the F-18 has a lot going on, but if you understand tactics and you understand what's going on, just because you fly a Flaming Cliffs plane doesn't make you a worse pilot. A lot of people fly them in this because they are the best planes that we can get. They have the best radars, they have the best weapons. The F-18 isn't to a point yet that it allows pilots to feel like this gives me any type of advantage because it's still on AIM-7s. And the Baguette or meme missile that Microvax likes to fly doesn't carry enough missiles to the point that it has any type of really advantage. It only carries 4, and if you can use them well, then have at it, but you're hampering yourself by only carrying that amount of munitions coming into a fight.
There's another point, the concept of HOTAS, hands on throttle and stick. So it doesn't matter whether you are in an FC3 aircraft or in a fully moduled aircraft. Yes, you must not forget to switch on your master arm, to select the missiles via your MFDs and so on. But once you are really in the fight, you basically utilize the same setup on your HOTAS, that is radar, TDC, cursor management, PRF management, all that kind of stuff. But tactically and in terms of what you have to press on your joystick and on your throttle and the buttons you are having to set up for an FC3 aircraft, it is almost equal to fully moduled aircraft. Now, are fully moduled aircraft more fun to fly? Do they demand a little bit more? Yes, they do. They have more steps you have to be aware of. But really the big difference is during startup, setup procedures, not so much during the fight itself.
And I'd even throw on that giving the extra radar modes and stuff could, and we haven't seen it because the F-18 isn't to the point yet, make pilots that are really good in FC3 aircraft more effective because they have more tools at their disposal in order to find and kill the bandits that they're trying to track.
Absolutely. And so don't hesitate, guys, you know, to grab an FC3 aircraft and train yourself in air-to-air until the F-18 gets fully developed or the F-14 comes out and stuff like that. For example, the F-14 will be very demanding since you need the Rio, and the Rio's work on the radar is so much different than what we're used to. On the other hand, for example, if you compare the Mirage, the radar is basically the same like in the F-15, right? You have different options and more modes that you can utilize, and you can program your bullseye waypoint on it and stuff like that. But that actually is an advantage. It's not a disadvantage, right? So what those fully moduled aircraft give you is even more options in order to be good in air-to-air. But the basic principles and the tactics and all of that can be learned in FC3 aircraft very well. And at the end, and that's when I want to close this debate maybe on the FC3, because the fight's going to happen any second here, is that in the end what really matters is that you have fun, guys. Yeah, don't let ever anybody tell you should be flying this or you should be flying that. Whatever you enjoy, that's valid.
So we see the teams getting a little bit closer, separated now by 48 nautical miles. IRIAF is still very close together. They've separated into what looks to be a 2-ship, a 3-ship, and a singleton with Gunslinger isolated. And then we have, if we look down here at Lock on Greece, they have separated into what looks to be 3 2-ships with 2 together and 1 separated off to the southwest. Their elements are separated by 11 nautical miles, while the Iranian Air Force is very close together.
Question is this going to be a pincer, a flank, or is that just going to be more frontal? I think the southern 2-ship got detected because Challenger is kind of flying that direction. But it's going to be interesting how this plays out. If it's going to be again a frontal or multi-axis engagement.
It's a good setup if you coordinate properly, like we said at the very beginning, right? If you know where your guys are, if you know how to flank them and how to fall back correctly and not get yourself separated, then this could be an advantageous setup. But at the same time, we've seen Greece do this over and over again and end up over again in that very disadvantaged position that they get separated from the main group, they get clamped, and then they get picked off one by one. So we will see how this one plays out. And also, as you can see, the IRF are not completely responding to that southern two-ship. However, they're responding a little bit wrongly because the guys who are separating to the south, now they're reacting. They've seen the northern group is closer, so one of the two guys who has been responding to the southern Greek group is now swinging back in order to address that, and the first missiles have been fired here.
And Gunslinger could be in trouble. He defended a little bit too late, and he ate that 120 as he was trying to split us away. So we do see Gunslinger for the Iranian Air Force getting popped by a 120 as he defends late into that engagement.
Hyper from the Greek squadron did get taken down, it seems, and Panther is in a whole world of trouble. Oh, no.
He notched that one. So we're down to a 5v5. Is that right?
Yes.
No.
Yes.
4v5, 5v5. One of the Iranians was on top of each other.
Interesting part is we now have like a numbers advantage in the north for the Greek squadron, but they are all coal. That's kind of problematic. Actually, 4 now committing to the southern 2-ship. They can keep running, then the northern 3-ship has a really good flank. If their GCI is aware of the situation, they have a really advantageous position here. But
yeah, we have a very mirrored thing, like the Greeks and the IRIAF are now doing the same mistake, getting separated with the northern and the southern 2-ship, and the majority then pointing on them. The difference being that the Greek guys are all...
Jesus.
Yeah, the Greek guys are all, now 2 guys have recommitted, but they were all defensive, and that's very bad. You know, if you let yourself to be defensive too long, then the other guys can really put pressure on you.
Hawk is in trouble, he's getting flanked. Panther, though, has to be careful not to get flanked by Falcon, but... Did we lose one of the GR guys in the south? No. Marine is recommitting.
Yeah, Hawk is in big trouble, so he's doing the same mistake like he did before. He's overextending over the enemy line, and now he's basically being clamped. However, the northern guys have let off of him, and the southern guy doesn't see him. Again, he's getting lucky, because usually what should happen is that one of the northern guys keeps off the northern IRF guy and then presses on Hawk, and Hawk scored a victory here. No, it wasn't Hawk, sorry, my mistake.
Was AW.
This was AW, and he basically saved Hawk's life through that, because now Hawk has a chance to get out. And we also lost the Greek guy in the south, as you can see, and now...
I think the Greek guy is still flying, because we see an ET coming from Raptor. I'm not sure, the Greeks had a pretty good position. I think Marine is going to merge with Challenger here in the south. Or do they see each other? Yes,
Marine's
here comes the missile.
There's that AIM-9.
Yeah, he's unaware.
Yeah, so that's a splash.
But I think Raptor's going to eat those 120s. That's really short range. Yep. So we now have a 3v3.
3v4.
Hawk on a merge with Zaf. Zaf is unaware, I think.
Falcon's got Aeolus behind him now. So we have a couple merges here. Or sandwiches, is Hawk trails Saf and Falcon trails Aeolus, and missiles being exchanged by Saf and Falcon.
ER is...
We just lost the IRAF guy by Saf. And it's a bit, though, I think you can make a little bit of... yeah. So now we're 2 versus 3. If this
AW
one hits,
is going to eat the R77, pretty sure. Yep.
Yeah. So now we have a 2 versus 2 again. And
no, it's a 3 versus 2. Panther in the north is still a thing.
Oh yeah, I have to zoom out a little bit. Yeah. So 3
so we could very well see a round 3 coming here.
I hope
Aeolus might get the flank. What does he have left for missiles?
But I don't like the Aeolus is recommitting by himself against Hawk and Challenger. I'd like to see him regroup with Saf and Panther up to the north. But he may be able to get the flank on Challenger. I don't think Challenger sees him, but he's got that missile warning now. But he's got Hawk all over his 6, puts a 120B on him, but he's way too close for that missile to be effective.
Challenger's going to eat that.
Yep.
Nope.
That is a kill.
And now we have an AIM-120 from Panther coming in defense of Aeolus.
Which could very well go for his buddy. He's lucky there, though.
Yeah, it's fine.
He is lucky.
And now we can see what happened since the IRIAF this time made the very same mistake that the Greek guys did. Yeah, so Hawk got lucky there, but I think we can make some, you know, guesses on how the GCI work is going in the background as well. I think there is a little bit of lack in coordination through the GCI. I can see that simply through a lot of times people not being aware of that guy that is the priority target for them, not putting on the pressure where they should. And usually it's the GCI's work to sort them out like that, you know, to say, hey, this guy is 3 miles of you, just snap right and you'll have him. And it didn't happen. He just flew by and then engaged a bandit that was 10 miles away from him. So I think there could be a little bit improvement also in the GCI work, but that is of course a little bit speculative from that side as well.
To be honest, I'm not sure if GR uses GCI because like ZAF has been extending for like, I don't know, very long. And
yeah, either they don't, or the GCI coordination, I wouldn't say it's a bad coordination, but it's not a very good one either. So, you know, it's not running as supposed to. And now, you know,
maybe
you have one guy,
low.
All the other 2 guys should be pushing on him hard, because, you know, the longer you let him survive, the more chances he has to make something out of it. And in the end, he even might get lucky. So, you know, it's a little bit uncoordinated, and we can see that they basically do not know where the guy is. Now that he's on the 6th, probably...
He lost the guy who was chasing there. He's blind on him, I think. Or at least he was.
Aeolus should be now calling in the guys, but they're not really intercepting them by an intercept vector. They're more like, you know, still looking. Where is he? Where is he? Where is he? And you know that, yeah. Aeolus gonna... No? Yeah, Aeolus bought it. And that's what I mean, you know. If the other guys would have put pressure on him much stronger, then he would have been psychologically more in the defensive mode. So Aeolus would have had a bigger chance of surviving there. If this uncoordinated thing happens again, Hawk might even get lucky and kill both of them.
The thing here also is GR should climb. Like, if you have a single bandit low in the mountains, you cannot give it, like, you should not give him the advantage of, like, surprise line of sight. You should climb and point your radar down and be like, yeah, try to come up at us, buddy. Like, the mountain game, like... If you're the singleton, it's totally the right move to do. Try to mask your position as much as possible to make stuff like this kill he made like 20 seconds ago possible. But like on the GR side, they should really climb.
At this moment, you can basically really see that both sides are scared. Yeah, they're flying low, they're trying to hide from each other, and the Greek guys are kind of forgetting a little bit that they're in advantage there, because even if they go 2 guys full head on Hawk, they might lose 1 guy, but kill him, they still have won the round. Now, the longer they do this cat and mouse game, the more they give Hawk a chance to kind of get out of that. Yeah, so I totally agree. And also on the server, what I always tell my guys is stay high, let the guy fly his thing in the valley, because only thing what he will do is bleed off his energy. If you stay high enough, you will not lose him, because you have a top-down radar ability. You can track him still and just stay above him. Don't lose him, don't go too low too early, and then when he comes into your shooting range, then bag him, but not earlier than that. So, and I think that you might be right, Microvax, that they do not have a GCI, because
it could also be its line of sight. Like, I'm not sure. I think the AWACS should have line of sight, at least on the higher bandits, but it could be it doesn't have a stable track.
Yeah, but at the moment now that Hawk is a little bit higher here at 9,000 feet, the AWACS should see him well. And he's just extending now. What both squadrons here, or those guys who are left over, have to keep in mind as well is fuel management, right? So if all of the 3 guys now run out of fuel, then it's a tie.
I think they got the message though. GR is climbing. They actually are now well over the ridge lines.
At the same time, Hawk now has to be aware that he must not fly out of the bubble. For those guys who forgot the rules of SATAL or are here the first time, it is so that you have a bubble around bullseye, 100 kilometers in each direction, and once you entered the bubble, you must not leave it again, because if you leave it prematurely, you give up the space and the other team wins, especially if you're only 1 aircraft left. So you have to be very well aware of the range that you're away from bullseye and how far you're gonna extend. Because then, you know, it's basically the same as getting shot down.
So looking at the weapons here, Hawk has a singleton
I'm 7.
aim 7. And then the other two guys have enough weapons to make this interesting. I mean, Panther, I think, had 3, and Saf had at least 1 ER and 273.
He is. No, he has 27. Yeah, he has 1 ER and 273s left. Yeah. So the Greek guys are at the advantage now, and all they need to do is put pressure on the bandit. That's where you don't let go anymore. You know you're in the upper hand. Do not be relaxed. Just keep pushing. Push, push, push. Because either he's going to fly out or he's going to make a wrong recommit. What I notice often with people is when I'm on the 6 and they're out of shooting range, just psychologically I fire a missile at them, and funny enough often they will recommit back into me because they think they're defending the missile. They should just keep extending, they wouldn't get killed. But just because your mind tells you I need to do something, a missile is coming my way, oh my god, then you start recommitting and they close the range into me, where I fire the second missile and just bag them, you know, while they're in the recommit. So putting pressure on the bandit is a very good psychological means, and psychological means do play a big part in air-to-air engagements, not to be underestimated. Everybody reacts to a missile launch warning. Everybody. Doesn't matter how experienced the guy is. You get a missile warning, you will start doing something else than what you initially had in plan.
I wonder if Hawk is having fuel issues.
He has his flaps out.
He put him back up, but he's
Okay.
staying at about 80% engine RPM, and he's really slow.
And he's also really starting to approach the bubble edge.
The thing is, if he wants to conserve fuel, like I like, this is not fuel conserving, so I'm not sure what the plan is here.
He's got, I think, another 5 nautical miles, so if he keeps pushing in that direction for another 5 miles, he's gonna exit the bubble.
He's basically trying to terrain mask, I think, but it's a little weird.
This is also one thing, you know, when you're left over as the single guy, and I think Mustang made a really awesome display of that in our match against China. He was out of missiles, he was low on fuel, but he still committed and killed the 2 guys rather than running away, because at some point you will have to fight, okay? Or you just get chased down or pushed out of the bubble. So it's better to recommit early and make the best out of it. You know, fly a clever maneuver, try to terrain mask around them like Mustang did, you know, end up on the 6 and so on. Because here you see it, you know, Hawk will have no other chance to recommit anyway. And the other guys, all they need to do is be relaxed about it, conserve the fuel, because at some point he will have to come back. And in my opinion, the sooner the better.
The thing what I see when I spectate Hawk, he has a very large, he's basically drifting. Like, his nose is not pointed at his velocity vector. I don't know if that's a desync issue or if he has, like, damage we don't see. I'm not quite sure.
Just checking the aircraft here a little bit, I wouldn't, there's no visual damage. There is wind in the mission though, is there, Malta?
Ah,
I
yeah,
don't think it's
yeah.
that significant though.
Yeah, so I think this is simply because of the wind. But yeah, if he keeps running in that direction, he's really gonna get out of the bubble. And, you know, at this point, I would just fly back on my side of the bubble if I were the other 2 guys and wait there for him. You know, wait it out. Well, that's what they're doing, you know, they just let him fly there, and good is.
I wonder if he's just trying, maybe he's just trying to run him out of fuel.
Yeah, that's what I mean. If I would be the Greek guys, I would park myself at my edge of the bubble and just wait it out, fly very fuel conservatively, because at some point he has to come back, then finish him off and then fly home.
Well, the other thing that could have made this a lot easier is if Panther and Zaf climbed to something like Angels 30 or Angels 40, got what you talked about earlier for that altitude advantage, use that look down, shoot down radar, and find him. And then once you find him, you have the energy advantage and he's dead to rights.
And another thing is, through the fact that the air is so much thinner up there, and thank God air is moduled in DCS in that sense, you burn way less fuel if you're up high than if you're down low. Yeah. So in any case, you know, the only disadvantage you get up high is if you end up in a low energy setup where when you then, you know, you might be flying 600 knots over ground, but you might end up at something like 150 knots indicated airspeed, which, as we all know, the true stall speed is rather connected to the indicated airspeed than the ground speed that you're having. So you have to really be on your toes when you fly above Angels 40, how you're going to enter that split S and how you're going to defend if you get shot on. But at this moment, they're not risking to get shot on, they're not risking anything. They should just be high, conserve the fuel, and wait it out. Do not chase him, you know. The longer they fly behind him, and this might be even a tactical decision by Hawk, fly home, give up the bubble, but have them chase long enough so that they do not make it back to base. Because if that happens, it's also going to be a tie.
Yeah, the high altitudes. Like, that's basically also like the great inflexibility of the high speed stuff I do. Like, you have to basically get to be a somewhat combat effective, get to Mach 1.7 or something to be kinda effective, because you just need that like airflow over the wings to do anything useful. That makes, like, for example, in SATAL, basically you have to cant a little bit to either side to actually get the distance you need to get to that speed.
Yeah, and if you think that, you know, you're flying around at 250 knots IAS at 45,000 feet, and then you just point your nose down, you will not accelerate as fast as you would if you point your nose down at 10,000 feet, simply because you don't have that airflow over the wings as you would have below, and also your engines are weaker. So, you know, you cannot simply quickly accelerate out of those 250 knots. You should be always around 450 knots IAS when you push into the split S and come out at the bottom at least at 600 knots, or even better around 700 to 800 knots without avoiding overspeed and crashes. But I think he should have left the bubble by now, no?
He's really
Absolutely
close to the edge of it.
The thing is, the bubble is bigger in this map, I think. It's like 100. It's like a little bigger in this one.
Ah, Roger. Yeah, I was counting with the 100 nautical miles, so by that he would be out already. But yeah, I think that is really, you know, a tactical trap he's playing for them. Trade my life, make them chase me long enough so that they simply will not have, because 100%. Okay, now he's turning back, but that's also good because he made them chase them. I would not have chased them at all. I would have parked myself at my side of the map, knowing that I have more aircraft, more chances to survive. But if he flies out, 100% that he will demand from the Greek guys that they fly RTB. He will not give the RTB away like they gave it away in the last round.
Thing is, yeah, I don't know. Like, I would have liked to see GR to fly higher. Like, yeah, at least, like, the thing is, 30,000. I think always, even if you're not that high energy, is a good compromise, because you still have like very significantly reduced fuel consumption, but like 30,000 is actually pretty nice place to accelerate, because your engines still have like quite a bit of power, excess power, and the drag is quite low. Like 40,000 is like meh place to accelerate. But 30,000
I would say, yeah,
fine.
anything 30 to 35,000 even. Now Hawk recommitted.
He's at a significant airspeed disadvantage, though. He's really slow.
He's actually accelerating though. He's sprinting for launch, I think, but he has only one AM7, so that's going to be interesting.
Here comes the sneaky AIM-9 coming from Panther on Hawk.
I think he doesn't see it.
About
I
8 nautical
don't know.
miles.
Here comes the counter shot.
No flares. I think he's going to eat that AIM-9.
No, he's not really defending.
No,
I
that's
don't know,
out
he's
of
flashed,
energy.
but he's engaged. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, but probably was trashed by energy. I don't know.
Here comes an ER from Saf.
ER doing what it does worst, basically turning, but he actually got the intercept vector. Yep, he should be dead from looking at the 2D.
Or did he notch it? He notched it.
I think he either notched it or actually beat it on turn circle. Like, looking from where the contra was, that could have been. There comes the R73.
Here comes the 73.
Good defense there.
He's in a merge.
Question is, where's the body?
Yeah, this is really a
There comes the missile flame.
Here comes AIM-7s and stuff from Panther. And there it is.
Yeah.
Popped in the cockpit.
So I think his reasoning behind that very long extend is like, let them burn as much fuel as they can until I recommit. That maybe isn't, yeah. And here you see, like I said, RTB. He immediately said, so he was calculating on that. That's not even stupid in my opinion. That's actually very clever that you extend so far. But on the other hand, you know, the inevitable is the inevitable. So, you know, if I would be the Greek guys in any way, I will have enough fuel to RTB no matter where I am, you know. To Senaki there's not such a long flight, so we will see. You know, unfortunately we cannot see how much fuel they have. I wish DCS would be showing that in the Game Master mode, but it doesn't. So we'll have to see.
Well, that's all stuff that I hope to bring. I've got some scripts and stuff that we'll get next year for this, for Season 2, but I gotta get some stuff worked out, and I don't want to do it in the middle of this season in order to make it work.
Thing is, like last week, I actually I would have gone guns only, but the problem was actually like after I took the second magic shot, I was basically 80 kilograms of fuel, and I was like, well, here we go. And it was actually like for once it wasn't actually me who had like the numbers I needed at the moment, because Dexter has done basically maximum glide range tests for all aircraft in DCS pretty much, and I was just like, give me those numbers, and I actually I glided like 35 nautical miles or something completely without engine. It was especially without seeing the airport. I was like, I have no idea where I am. It's a pretty interesting experience.
So, real quick, Darkside Rob says, but he could have won instead of going for the draw by landing. Well, there is some stuff in place for that. So what happens is if he leaves the circle and goes and lands, and Lock on Grease stays in the circle, if Lock on Grease stays in the circle for 5 minutes, they take control and they win the round as long as they're able to land. So just because you get a plane on the ground doesn't mean that you're effectively going to win. So if they were to stay in the air and take control of the circle for 5 minutes and then land, he would have lost. Or if they would have stayed in the air, taking control of the circle and then crashed, it would have been a draw.
That's why, you know, I would have countered that, you know, let's burn the fuel thing that Hawk did here, which, like I said, is actually quite clever. But the counter for that is, you know, you have two guys, there's only one guy. Park yourself on the opposite side of the bubble and just sit it out, you know. Because at some point, either he exits, he runs out of fuel, or he has to fly all the way back to you if he wants to make something out of it. So, you know, in any case, you have the advantage. Just don't follow him all the way to the other side, especially if you're low on fuel. I am, however, sure that the Greek guys were very, very conscious about the fuel status here, and that they will make it back to base, which, yeah, will give us another round here. But it is possible, you know, if you're high enough. I think my personal record was on Operation Leopard on the 104th. I ended up with, say, 200 or 300 pounds of fuel, somewhere between Mostok and Beslan. And I was high enough so that, you know, I could climb out to between 55 and 60,000 feet something. And then I flew on 75% throttle, you know, at stall speed. Back to Tbilisi, and took ages, you know, but I still made it back to home because some, you know, 30 nautical miles away from the base, all you need to do is, you know, point down the nose and glide in. If you manage that glide, you don't even need engines to land, you know, but you really have to know how you break into the pattern and how you make your approach without engines, because you only get one chance, right?
So to cut in here, VVJT Splash says, well, guys, at DCS World Events, Heapler and Splash 1 Gaming, my baby is on the way, because I think he was watching from the delivery room. I wish that I could stick around for the last round and the Tomcat giveaway, but my baby wants to be born. See you later. Congratulations, Splash.
Yeah,
I'm sure
Splash.
I speak for everybody. I hope you name it either Eagle Dynamics or Heapler, but congratulations. Sorry you have to miss out on the giveaway. Yeah, Iron Mike is a solid name. I don't know how your wife will feel about that one, but congratulations. I think I speak for everybody in chat. And I think that is a little more important than a module, and your wife will probably appreciate you being there for that.
And we wish for the baby all the best, and it has a happy life, a good welcome into the world, and lots of wealth and everything you need in order to make a good, living. So congratulations from Heatblur.
So while we're change topics back to DCS here, while these guys are RTB, I think it's the perfect time to talk about what we think both teams could do, what we talked about between first and second round, what teams could do better, what they did well, so on and so forth. So we'll go in the same order. Iron Mike, if you want to lead this out, what you thought was done positive, negative, so on and so forth.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, this time we can basically repeat what we said for the Greek guys in the first round for both teams this time. IRF, and at some point it was really mirrored. You had that 1-2 ship in the south split off by the Greek guys, and then you had 1-2 ship in the north split off by the IRIAF, and they got separated, they got mixed up, they didn't know where to recommit, they did not snap on the bandits, they had a poor situational awareness. Again, guys, remember, when we say poor, this is for educational value, not to pick on pilots. We have huge respect for anybody who's flying here, but indeed it is poor situational awareness. If you pass a bandit 3 nautical miles, you don't see him, and you go for somebody, and then that guy recommits behind you and picks you off from your 6. So in that sense, sticking together is so important, because only when you're together, when you're in trouble, somebody can save you. The other thing is, I mentioned that already, is when you see somebody extend that much and you have the upper hand with 2 guys, sit it out, don't follow him. Don't bring yourself into a hairy situation where you can end up without fuel. We will yet have to see how that works out for the Greek guys, but I have good confidence. On the one-on-one engagements, this time Greek got the upper hand, so they got basically a comeback so far. They won the bubble, they ended up 2 versus 0. It's not such a strong and decisive win as for the Iranians in the previous round, but still, they turned it around for themselves, and that has to be commended as well. It is always a little bit, sometimes 50-50 thing, but it is also how you perform in that 1 versus 1 when it breaks down to a 1 versus 1, and that's where this time the Greek guys absolutely had the upper hand. My opinion, why? Because the defensive maneuvers and the split S's by the Iranian guys were performed sometimes with a low energy profile, and in that sense also a little bit poorly. I think Microvax mentioned that during the fights, and you as well, Molter. We've seen them, that they basically were on a too low energy profile while defending the missile, and that's why the missiles were able to sneak up on them and hit them. If you have a good entering energy into the fight, then you have also a good exit energy when you go defensive, and that's what the Iranian guys were missing in the 1 versus 1 engagements, and that's why more of the people got killed than by the Greek guys. Like I said, it's all about energy.
Simon?
Go ahead, Microx.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I think this time it pretty much turned out very chaotic. I think GR had... The split actually did work for them, they just basically failed to capitalize on it, I think. Because you had, in the start, you had the 4 ship in the north, the 2 ship in the south, and the IRIAF actually committed more fighters to the south than there were fighters in the south. So they actually generated a scenario where they broke off the enemy formation. They had a numerical advantage in the place where IRIAF was established in the north, where they actually had basically the organizational, maybe not advantage, but at least parity. While in the south, basically IRIAF was responding to what GR did, which was a very good position. Problem was that basically the guys in the numbers advantage in the north didn't capitalize on it and stayed cold in the numbers advantage. If they capitalized there, I think they could have won it way more decisively, but I think overall their setup worked out for them. They just didn't see it in time, and it's like I know our setups, and even if they work, getting it communicated, first realizing it and communicating it fast enough to actually basically take the opportunity that it presents itself is really not simple. So it's hard, but yeah, that's something I would have liked to see from the IRF side. I don't know if they didn't see the southern ship. I would have liked to see them react a little bit earlier to that, because the reaction was basically happening at at the first, very close to like where the first missiles get fired, and it was not very cohesively, like not in the first match where we saw like basically two ships sticking together all the way along. It was actually like, well, first a single ship and then like two other dudes, but I think they were part of different two ships. Like, yeah. I don't know, that the reaction was a little bit weird.
And you're absolutely right with the defensive thing. You know, I mean, the Greek guys were you know, extending for way too long. That's why they didn't capitalize so much. I agree totally. And the other thing is, you're also right on how uncohesive the IRIAF reacted on the southern split ship, because what we've seen is like in the last second, then they went again back for the other guys. So, you know, sometimes when you decide to go for something, if you're not threatened, follow through with it. It will yield you a much, you know, more likely success than if you make another decision shortly before then another decision. So you just confuse yourself and you give, you know, the bandit more chances to capitalize on your own confusion. So yeah, I think we've really seen the situational awareness of the IRAF fall apart really, really drastically this time. What'd you say, Malta?
My turn. So a couple things that I think I touched on last round was weapons conservation. Again, we saw a large amount of weapons being exchanged from both sides, and I think if they were able to maintain those weapons maybe for a little bit longer, maybe they were just trying to put them on the defensive, but I saw a lot of foxes on already cold bandits, and how DCS missiles work, they don't maintain their energy very well. So you fox on a cold bandit that's already 5 or 10 nautical miles away and he's got some airspeed, it's probably not going to catch him unless he recommits into it. I think Lock on Greece stayed closer together, which I really like to see. I think on the opposite side of the coin, IRIAF was a little more separated as the battle progressed. I liked seeing that Lock on Greece at the end there was able to stay disciplined, and they didn't decide, all right, full gate, we need to catch this guy and chase him down. They stayed in a saunter, conserved their fuel, but on the other side of that coin, I would have liked to see them gain some more altitude so that they could have exchanged that altitude for energy when they got to a point when they thought that they could chase him down. And it also gives their missiles an advantage because they're able to do that same energy to speed exchange, and the missiles just fly better at a higher altitude. So there is a give and take. You lose the mountains as cover, but I would have liked to see altitude gained a little bit earlier so that you can have a better radar picture and you have that altitude for speed exchange as a possibility. And also we're seeing these guys really have to conserve fuel. We're seeing the flanker come back in SAF at 70% RPM, and he's throttling down even more. He's coming back down to getting pretty close to idle. They wouldn't really have had to climb up to altitude very far. They would have already been at a decently high altitude instead of doing this, because they could have started the engagement higher. So your decisions that you make, even early in the match, middle of the match, late of the match, everything has consequences, positive and negative. And it's just things that you may not consider when you're making those decisions. So something you may need to think about when you're going into your next fight here in DCS or BMS or any flight sim that you're looking at is everything you do has a consequence, whether you weigh that consequence for your decision or not. I wish we could see these guys' fuel states. SAF is now back up to 75%.
Yeah, they are in safe range though. Like they are like 60 kilometers. Yeah, 60 kilometers.
At least you would hope.
I mean, as long as the engine, like, you can do, like, they could even have, like, no engine power at this point. They are fast enough and high enough, pretty much. The flanker glides pretty well. Yeah, he has plenty of speed. Like, he's 500 indicated airspeed.
Yeah, I think they will easily make it.
I think he's okay.
But yeah, I also agree with you, Malta. Those were very good points you said there. You know, missile management is so important. And another thing I've noticed, what very few people do, is they do not crank. And cranking is utterly important.
Yes.
Because what it does is that you set yourself up for the reversal. Because, you know, in Flaming Cliffs 2, back in the days, we had those 40 nautical miles full gimbal AIM-120C shots. And if the guy was thinking, oh, he's flying away from me, which the crank is also a trick, as it appears like that on the enemy's radar, you know, then those guys were simply toast. But nowadays what you have to do is basically you put him on the full gimbal, and then you reverse through the crank, where you build up all that energy that you already prepare in order to break into the split S. And then when the shoot cue in the F-15, you have that very nicely as the little dot. Once it's aligned with the aircraft datum, and that's going to be a split second, so you have to pull that trigger or press the launch button early on, so that it launches really on the shoot cue, right? In the reverse, you launch the missile and you just follow that reverse through directly into the split S. And that sets you up with an energy level that makes you easily defend AIM-120s, even from 5 nautical miles. So if I fly on the server, on events you're always a little bit more careful, but on the server, for example, I sometimes really go as close as 5-6 nautical miles waiting for my shot, simply because I prepared with a crank, the reverse, and then the follow through in the split S. I take into that enough energy and enough altitude and not too much distance. And if you do that, then you're always on the upper hand, because the other guy is just pointing straight at you, and he will have a much harder time to transform this straight full burn flight into an effective split S that would then yield you enough energy in order to defeat the missile.
I miss the old lock-on days of those longer range BVR engagements.
Oh, don't get me started on that. That's how the AIM-120 should be, you know.
I
and
agree.
People still say today,
Maybe we'll get it eventually.
That's unfortunately because they haven't been, you know, some of the guys, a lot of guys have been around for that time and also back in lock-on. And, you know, there were different things that were funny then, because, for example, air was moduled but not gravity. Like we have today, gravity is kind of at least scripted module. I couldn't say 100%. But what happened back in the days, you would see a guy flying at Angel 60, you know, and you would just fire on him from 60 nautical miles. Now what the missile would do, because the air got thinner and there was no gravity, it would start accelerating, you know. So you could kill the guys from, you know, partially 60, 70 nautical miles, all those high-flying bandits. I mean, those were really epic missiles, and I think it's good because it makes for better BVR. On the other hand, what we have here through those weaker missiles today is we have much more VVR situations, which of course is nice. You get to see more aircraft, right? Back in Flaming Cliffs 2, we've seen basically kill messages, yeah? All the time you would see killed that guy, but sometimes you would not even spot the splash because it was that far. However, when you got into a VVR situation and into a dogfight, you knew A, you deserved it because you've done well, and B, the other guy is similar good as you are because he too made it into the VVR. That means both guys were good in the BVR, and then it was decided. And to kill then somebody in a dogfight with guns or short-range missiles was much more rewarding than it is today, because you really had to be on your wits and on your toes in order to make it through the very, very long BVR phase that we had back in the days. And I hope it will come back at some point. I hope that Eagle Dynamics will change their RMAX philosophy and bring back the missiles as, you know, at least I think they should be.
Watching these guys come through the cloud deck now. Should be popping out anytime. See if they're able to land. Count it as a successful victory, and regardless, we're going to round 3. If they crash, it's a draw. If they land, they get a win, and it'll go to 1-1.
But yeah, I didn't get to give my input on the FC3 discussion before, but I very much agree with you guys. The thing is, when I fly FC3 stuff, which is usually just for testing how to defeat it, I feel so disabled because the things can't do anything. Like, even simple things as set up like a TACAN link between like your aircraft and a second Like, it just can't do that. Like, you want to quickly throw a reference point somewhere to have, like, a quick and easy way to, like, gauge a distance without being like, oh, I have to go to F10 map and now use the ruler tool. Like, it's like, yeah, I really feel quite limited with the FC3 aircraft. Like, for pure air combat, like, the maneuvering, the weapon systems, etc., it's really no different overall than the Mirage. Like, the only stuff you have basically in the Mirage which can, like, ruin your day is when you leave the selective jettison switch on and you're like, Fox 1, and you just hear clunk, and basically missiles falling off your rail, and you're like, this is not supposed to happen, it should fire the motor. Like, that's really the only thing that makes the Mirage harder. Like, it ruined my day once or twice.
Yeah, I also was in the position where I forgot the mast arm, and then you know, fire the trigger and just nothing happens. You go, oh shit, now he's gonna chase me all across the map, you know. But I totally agree, you know, having a non-FC3 aircraft is an advantage and not a disadvantage. So anybody who's really good in air-to-air in an FC3 aircraft is a really good pilot as well, and it really doesn't matter when it just comes to the OTAS procedures and tactics, flying envelopes, missile deployment, weapons deployment in general. So both teams made it back RTB, and that's a win for the Greek squadron. So congratulations to Lock on Greece for winning this round. And I think we're all very, you know, excited about how the third round will end up.
Thing is actually also, like, I think that, I don't know if this situation with SD3 versus fully clickable existed before, like, the Mirage was a thing or something, but the problem here is simply you're comparing, like, when people say, oh, SD3 OP, tralala, it's like, usually, I don't think it's really, the thing is they blame some people blame, like, how stuff is modeled, but it's really just you're comparing, like, the F-15 and the Flanker, which is, like, it's hard. I think the F-18 makes it really easier to grasp that, like, the F-15 and the Flanker are the top performing air-to-air platforms of their time from the respective faction, like, be it NATO and PAC. Like, there simply wasn't a better fighter at the time. So basically, the thing is not that, like, the FC3 modeling screws you over, it's actually that you're, like, fighting an aircraft which is, like, I don't know, worth 3 of your own frame. It's just simply designed for, like, being that all out, like, we just do air-to-air and nothing else and we want air security here concept design. So that's, I think, more often the thing, and it's like, it's an easy, like, it's basically the thing with coincidence versus correlation, where, like, there is a coincidence but it's not correlated.
Yeah, and there's another very important aspect about FC3 aircraft, and that is diversity on one hand, because I'm sure at some point, you know, we will have that planed battlefield where you have tons of red aircraft, but this is very far down the line, guys, you know. So now what would happen if we would, say, remove all the FC3 aircraft? You would have, you know, an F-18 and an F-14 being fourth generation fighters on the blue side, flying against maybe F-5s, MiG-21s, you know, so another stream of tears would come from that direction. You know, the blue guys have the better aircraft than we have. It wouldn't be a plain battlefield in that sense, and then also it would be a very less diverse battlefield with much less targets that you can engage and so on, you know. So all those aircraft that are coming in here now are great, and I love them, you know. Fully moduled is especially where the heart is, but in general it is also an entry level for other guys who might be overwhelmed learning an aircraft. So it is also functioning as a door for new people entering the community, and that also is very good. Never forget that we are actually a very small community when it comes to comparison to other games like, say, World of Warcraft or CSGO or stuff like that, you know. So in that sense, it is so important that we have all those kind of different levels of simulation, as long as it doesn't give you an advantage. And I think we already pointed out quite nicely that in fact FC3 is rather a disadvantage than an advantage when you have two equally strong aircraft, right? Think just about what the F-18 will be able to do, how many AIM-120s it will be able to carry. At the same time, it will be able to get rid of that SAM that is waiting there, maybe around bullseye, and kill some tank on the run at the same time. You know, I mean, that's not no FC3 aircraft will be able to facilitate that for you. So it really is rather a disadvantage than an advantage. But at the same time, it's diversity. It's an entry level for people, and I can only recommend it for anybody. It is a good aircraft to train your air-to-air skills in. And somebody's asking, what about the F5? F5 is a great aircraft. I love it. But you also have to make the decision for yourself. What kind of tool are you bringing to the battlefield, right? For example, in the 104th, we were thinking shortly about whether we should switch to the F-18 already in SATAL, but we just said it's just a stupid idea because you're bringing the wrong tool at the moment to this battlefield, since you will put yourself in a disadvantage. You only have the AIM-7, the radar is not working very well yet, and so on, you know. So you have a limited situational awareness, you have limited weapons capabilities, and it's simply a stupid idea. Yeah, you have a limited toolbox. And you know, for example, on the 104th now in the Operation Clean Sweep on the Persian Gulf, there's a lot of F5s flying around for the Iranian side, and I really commend those guys because they take on the challenge. They bring that much more disadvantaged aircraft against F-15s, against F-18s, against Harriers, you know, and those guys are really in there for the challenge. But at the same time, those are also the guys who know why they get shot down, and they don't complain that they've been shot down much more times than they would in a flank or in an F-15, because they know very much they are bringing disadvantaged aircraft, and they do it just because of that. And you know, in that sense, the F-5 is a great aircraft, but sometimes, like the MiG-21, it's just the wrong tool to bring for the fight.
So it looks like the teams are joining. Server's back up, as you guys can see. Just waiting on everybody to join, then we'll give the spool up and taxi call, and then we'll get round 3 underway. This is the deciding round, so if either team wins this, it's over. If it draws, it's over. So one way or another, this is the last round for how this round 19 of SATAL is gonna pan out between Lock-on Greece and the Iranian Air Force.
Maybe Molter, because I got the question earlier on, what happens if it's a draw? How does the point system work, and how do the best out of 3 rounds work?
You mean, how does the point system like count for?
Yeah,
after
what
the
happens
rounds of the match completion?
Since it's best out of 3, say it's a draw next round, then the entire match will be a draw.
So then both teams would just get 1 point. So how SATAL point system works, and you guys can see all of this on the merge, is if you win, you get 3 points. If you lose, you don't get any points, but you also don't lose any points. And if you draw, you get 1 point for a match played. That's really about it. The best out of 3 is whoever wins the most matches. Obviously, at a best out of 3, if each team wins 1 match, there can be a draw because we're not pushing this to more and more rounds. We had issues with that in SATAC, where especially when the Chinese were playing each other, we had something like 9 rounds, and there was a lot of fatigue. The matches went really late, and we don't want that to happen again. So real quick, Jazzy95, thanks for the host, buddy. 18 viewers, welcome. If you're new here, this is SATAL round 19 of Lock-on Greece versus the Iranian Air Force. I guess I'll do a quick introduction here. I'm Moltar, joined by my co-hosts of Alex and Simon, and we're here just making things happen. So after the completion of round 3, again, I know I said this at the very beginning, for anybody that is joining late, there will be an interview with the 8th Squadron, who is a Latin American English as a second language squadron, and they're really making an effort to make multiplayer a more enterable scenario for people that don't necessarily speak English first and that have a hard time speaking English. They help with brevity, they help with learning planes and so on and so forth of that nature. And then we have Heat Blur coming later to talk about possibly the flight model maybe, but primarily the Jester AI, and to give away a Heat Blur module. And then following either next week or the week after, I will be giving away a Buddy Fox A10 UFC, so be sure to tune in for that. So anything, Alex or Simon, that you guys want to say to maybe people that are just now joining in before we get round 3 under? underway and get going?
Welcome, and we're very happy to have you, and I hope you enjoy the stream and the giveaway, and I hope one of you guys gets really lucky and takes home a Tomcat today. At the same time, if you would prefer to have a Viggen, you can have that too, that's up to you, but I strongly advise that you get the Tomcat, since I think many of you will have the Viggen already. It's a great aircraft as well. If you do not have the Viggen yet, check it out, guys. It is really well done. The graphics are outstanding. I mean, it has something which no other aircraft has at the moment. It's a true raycaster air-to-ground radar. So, you know, you have ground mapping abilities, and it brings a very special anti-ship strike capability, which also no other aircraft has. Besides, it has a reverse thrust, so you can land on very short runways, you can land on a very short road. And it brings a variety of very awesome weapons, from the Arak rockets over to the RB-15 missiles. You have Mavericks. You can use Mavericks in air-to-air. You have A9s, you have gun pods, you have the BK-90, which is a guided dispenser cluster bomb. You have high drag bombs, and there's so many nice possibilities. You can perform recon, which also is not at the moment available to any other aircraft. That means you can spot targets on your radar, and in your data panel you can map those targets as target waypoints, and then later on you will also see them even on your knee board. So for example, you could take a Viggen, you could fly out, you could spot the target, you can even set the course and speed. You can all do that, and then, you know, you could relay that information to some A-10s or some other aircraft you're flying with. So I think the Viggen is really filling a really nice gap in the whole DCS universe, and if you have not tried it out yet, please do, because it is really an awesome aircraft.
And you can do J-turn takeoffs with the reverse thrust. That's like also a very memorable feature. Like, it was basically, there's like one moment, like, it was so glorious. Like, Jamin was streaming, he was flying a Mirage, and like the Viggen was just released, and basically he was taxiing, and I just, for the shit and giggles of it, was taxiing, but like the wrong way around. So I basically was looking at him, and then when we came to the runway, I basically just like pumped up the throttle a little bit in reverse, just threw the nose gear around so that I pointed in the direction of the runway and just straight took off. Like, the thing is, it's really a lot of fun to play around with the reverse thrust. Like, it's like there's various opportunities, and something also which no other aircraft does in DCS is Eland. You can fly around and it will basically record what it sees on the RWR, and if you know how the RWR works and fly like a correct search pattern for it, you can get pretty accurate fixes on what SAMs are out there.
Not only that, it's nice that you mentioned the RWR, because Ragnar, who coded big parts of the Viggen, did an extremely awesome job. That the RWR, in contrary to any other RWR that we have in DCS up to date, is you know, going by amplitude. So if you know how far away that and how strong the emitting radar is by, you know, the sequence of beeps that you're getting and the intensity of the RWR response that you get from that radar. So this is really an amazing tool in order to increase your situational awareness from the RWR perspective, and that's very unique in DCS at the moment.
You can also do cruise missile things if you know how to do it. You basically read the real RBS-15 manual, then you apply a good dose of creativity, and then you have a cruise missile.
Yeah. So yeah, guys, if you haven't checked out the Viggen yet, do so. It is an amazing aircraft.
It's a shit aircraft. I don't know what you're talking about.
I think Malta was still in RVE when he basically. Before the Viggen release, I was like already Viggen fanboy to the max, and basically I was like filling the chat for a year or something, like RVE internal, with random Viggen facts more or less daily. Yes, at one point I even set up the chat bot because
Sweden
people were
should
annoyed.
have given you like an honorary Swedish citizenship.
Maybe. But basically at some point I even set up the chat bot to basically be
Germans
like...
would have probably been like, thank God he's gone.
Basically,
I think Walter is basically asking me to discontinue the Heat Plus sponsorship at this point.
But basically, I set up the chatbot like because people were annoyed to just like respond like, "Oh, the vegan, tell me more about this." When someone mentioned it, it was pretty fun times.
And sorry, guys, this is taking a minute. We were waiting on one of the IRIAF guys to get a good connection to the server. So we see here that Lock on Grease is already taxiing, but we were just waiting on a late connect. So it took a few minutes, but we're back on track. I can see you got in an aircraft, and we should be good to go. I love it. I love it when you hit F11, it just takes you to some random airfield.
It's actually not random.
Oh, Molter, if you allow me, I will make a quick announcement of the next red flag, if you like.
Yeah, go for it.
Since we were speaking about the vegan, the next red flag is going to be a red flag rumble again, and it is going to feature again F5 and Harrier against vegan and MiG-21, or I think the MiG's going to be different this time. But yeah, fully clickable modules only, and air-to-ground and air-to-air engagements. If none of you have ever participated in a red flag rumble, please be our guests and sign up. As long as there's still places available, it's on a first-come, first-served basis, with a maximum of pilots being able to fly at any given time by any squadron. And if you give me 1 second, then I will post the link into the chat.
Yeah, you should be able to post it now, Iron Mike. If it deletes it, just let me know. I can see it.
I still need to find it very quickly here.
Thing is,
not that I would come prepared to such a thing, you know.
yeah,
we all know you fly by the seat of your pants.
That's true, man. I love my pants.
Thing is, the thing is with the vegan, I'm not quite sure. The thing is, the F-18 can do a lot of roles, but the thing with the vegan is really, it has a pretty unique engine. Like, it's really a funny, like, the engine is basically the compressor part itself is basically it's an airliner engine originally. That's also why the inlet system is very, very, very basic. Like, it was basically designed to be easily, like, there was a little bit of Russian design philosophy with the vegan to make it easy to maintain in the field. So basically the inlet system has no moving parts as I'm aware of. It's basically just a straight inlet with quite a bit of space before the air hits the compressor, so it doesn't stall it, like at Mach 2.0. Like, you can't really go faster, not because it doesn't have enough engine power in some situations, but just supersonic airflow will hit the engine. So the compressor stage is really efficient. It has a really high bypass ratio. So you can fly at low level at maximum drive for really astonishing range. There's, like, the Tornado can do it as well, because that has also, like, the Tornado has special built engines exactly for that. They are a little bit more efficient, but the vegan gets astonishingly close for using a civilian engine. And then you have that huge monstrosity of Sweden went like, we have an airliner engine, and now we put, like, the most abnormous afterburner we can find on it. Like, the afterburner, like, when you go pretty fast, like Mach 1.2, it will burn like 900 kilograms of fuel per minute. Like, it's basically chewing through a ton a minute, pretty much. But it gives you so much thrust, which makes for a really interesting combination. You can really accelerate out of trouble really fast, but at the same time have very good fuel efficiency. So I think the vegan will survive in a role where it's basically delivering BK-90s and such, because it just has the range to stay terrain masked if it knows where stuff is. And like with stuff like the Tomcat coming, where like we've already seen pictures of the lantern pod working, like having a F-14 doing a high reconnaissance run where it basically can defend itself, basically spot the targets with lantern from range and basically give you the coordinates, and then you basically have the vegan, which doesn't have to be line of sight to actually engage the target, and you basically have the advantage of having that very long range at low level, making for a good ingress, and then you have that ability to really get out of trouble. So the F-18 is nice, but I think the vegan will survive in the strike role overall.
So, where did that comment go? Madkin says, Iron Mike, that your guys' next red flag should be the Christian Eagle versus the Mi-8.
No fucking way the Christian Eagle will be part of any of my event.
I don't know how fair that would be, because the Mi-8 would just fly through the Christian Eagles, and they just blow up.
Listen, guys. For everybody who loves the Christian Eagle, please do. You know, don't listen to my bullshit talking. That's not appropriate. The Christian Eagle is a great aircraft. It's not my primary choice, but everybody else who loves it, don't ever get told by anybody what you should or should not like. Right. So if you're into the Christian Eagle, please be so. And I'm pretty sure that Leatherneck will do a great job on the Christian Eagle.
He also doesn't like pushing and they've talked too much about it.
Yeah, you know, Microvac, sometimes when you keep repeating the same shit over and over again, people tend to stop listening.
It's their problem, not mine.
Yeah, that they do not get spoon-fed all that wisdom. I mean, how stupid can they be? Oh, so funny.
More fun facts. The F-110 engine used on the F-14B variant and D variant actually was later developed into the engine for the upgraded U-2 and the B-2 aircraft.
Can you kick this guy from the server quickly then?
So what do you guys think? How do you guys think round 3 is going to pan out? What do we think is going to happen? How do we think both teams are going to do? What are your guys' predictions and expectations for this last round of this matchup?
I actually don't have a prediction. I think it's very, very open and it very much depends. You know, now we have seen that in both rounds, both teams have done the same mistake. So now it will depend on whether they will learn from that, whether they spotted that mistake, because sometimes you're not aware of your mistake. You were in a, you know, for us it is very nicely to digest all of that in a top-down view and, you know, to have all that insight that we have with that plain battlefield we see in front of our eyes. But from a cockpit sometimes you don't know really what happened, especially when you see that the SA fell apart. That means that a lot of information got past them, right? And it is always questionable, are you really able as a team to recognize what kind of mistake you made, and then the next step being, you know, to correct that mistake, because mistakes are good, you know. The question is whether you learn from them or not, and I think this, whether they learn from this or not, is going to decide how the round 3 will, how the outcome of round 3 will be.
So real quick, guys, I just want to make this abundantly clear, because we had some people trolling in chat, that if you guys are going to say negative things in chat, anything disrespectful or anything, I don't tolerate shit, so I'll just ban you. No questions asked, I don't give warnings, I'll just ban your ass. So, be nice, be civil, most of us are adults here, let's not be assholes. My only rule in chat is don't be a dick. If you're a dick, I ban you on the spot. So, just a heads up. No hard feelings, because I won't have any when I ban you. Sorry for interrupting.
Yeah, and that's totally okay, and I think it's all in good humor, but always remember, guys, you know, you never know how the other guy is seeing it, and usually when we are sitting face to face, we're much more friendly with each other, and it's good to take that attitude into the chats, into the forums. We often see fights, you know, on forums, on Facebook going on between people that are just, you know, borderline ridiculous in some cases, not pointing at anybody of our viewers here, of course. But it is not representative of the community, because actually when you are on TeamSpeak online with the guys that I met so far, with a few exceptions, are extremely nice, extremely helpful. It is a very mature community. I think I would not want to be part of any other gaming community than this one. And it is unfortunately sometimes misrepresentative what we see in some forums and some, you know, chats and Discords and Facebook groups and so on, what's going on, because truly people, once they're together, are not really like that. Okay, here comes the go. And I think we can move on to the fight.
And again, guys, I apologize for the delay. I just had some issues getting people orientated and ready to go. But the fight's on. This is round 3, final round for this week 19 of SATAL between Lock-On Greece and IRIAF, or the Iranian Air Force. So, and honestly, I know Iron Mike wasn't giving predictions because he didn't know what was going on, but I don't either.
Nobody knows. We'll see. We'll see. I wish to both teams that they do well. I don't have favorites, as always. All guys are my favorites, and I really wish the best of luck to both teams. May the better one win, as we say. Microvax might have predictions, though. He's already.
How do you guys feel about the Iranian Air Force taking 3 drop tanks? We've talked about this a couple times in the past, but I don't fly the F-15, but from everything I've heard, the ideal situation is you should take 2 and not 3.
I agree. Yeah. I mean, it's like for very extensive events where it's not about the bubble fight and where you have to fight it out, you know, it might be an advantage, especially if you know that in any case the flight is so long that you'll have dropped your tanks by the time. But usually, you know, when you get into the flight, you drop your tank, so you know all that extra fuel that you had before the fight, it's, you know, it doesn't really give an advantage, nor does it give a disadvantage. The one disadvantage being is that, you know, when you pickle your tanks with a 3-bag setup, you will have to pickle your outer bags first, and you end up with 1 bag, while you might make it to the fight with 2 bags. And if you're experienced enough in the F-15, and if you do what I said before with the cranking, reverse, and setup with enough energy, you can very well fight through any engagement with 2 bags on the F-15, because they don't produce as much drag as 3 bags would. But 3 bags, if you keep them on, you really get a disadvantage, because you will have so much drag and it'll slow you so much down that, you know, it will be very hard to defend missiles effectively. So in my opinion, 2 bags much better than 3 bags.
The thing is, I don't fly it, but I have looked at the drag index tables for it, and it's indeed like the center line tank has very big drag penalty. I think it's actually even more than the 2 wing tanks together.
Yeah.
The thing is, if you could, I think in the real aircraft you can select which tanks you feed from. So if you could like basically use the center line as some throwaway fuel you just use to like maximum performance climb and like throw away basically before the fight.
Yeah, then it would be awesome, you know.
And basically just pickle the singleton tank off the center line. I think that would be pretty useful, but as is like, yeah, I think unless you're really betting on dragging out the fight for a long way, I agree with Iron Mike. 2 tanks is the more reasonable option.
And again, here you can see what a disadvantage an FC3 aircraft is, because in the Hornet you will be able to choose which tank you're going to pickle, you know, and by that you can make a tactical decision which bag to drop first, you know, which bag to pickle first, and how much fuel to bring and how much you need to get there, and RTB and so on and so forth. So, you know, in this case, again, FC3 aircraft is at a disadvantage because you're hard locked into, you know, you have to do either that or that. There's no other option.
So real quick, I'm seeing some questions about weapons and what's banned and what's allowed and stuff. I'll touch on that real quick. So what's allowed is all weapons with the exception of the AIM-120C and the MiG-21's nuke. You can fly whatever module you want. Those are the only 2 weapons that are banned. And as far as actives, you're only allowed to carry 4 of the R-77 and the AIM-120B. That was just what we deemed. We think that the AIM-120B and the ER, that's what our balancing was, they're as close as we're going to get as far as keeping the weapons as modern as possible. We just felt that the AIM-120C had such a large era gap that it didn't really make it. It didn't seem to fit with all of the other weapons that were available in DCS at the time. So those are the choices we made. Of course, we may revisit it. We may make SATAL semi-active only next year. I don't know how it's going to play out, but that's what we've got going on this year. So that's what's going on. You won't see any AIM-120Cs, Bs only. You'll see R-77s, but they're kind of a non-factor because they have such short range. So sorry for interrupting, Iron Mike. Just wanted to clarify that for the viewers.
No, that's very good to know. And also, you know, guys, be aware that there's a plethora of events that we all do that will always be a little bit of a mix. It doesn't mean that in any event, in any SATAL and so on, we might go for balance. You know, sometimes might be unbalanced, sometimes might be balanced. This is a proactive decision for balance rather than a decision against the AIM-120C, because there's nothing wrong with the AIM-120C. It's just like it is, you know, if you want a full realism, then you will have to make do with the fact that some missiles going to be stronger and some aircraft setups going to be stronger. But since we want here really to focus on the strength of the pilot rather than the strength of a missile, You know, I mean, you still have a better chance to get lucky with an A120C than with an A120B. This is a decision pro-balance, but not against the A120C. Correct me if I'm wrong, Walter.
No, it's exactly right. So a lot of people want realism in DCS, which I'm wholeheartedly for. But when you're in a competitive environment, realism isn't always the best choice. We went for balance with SATAL, and this is where we ended up because we wanted to see who the best pilots were, not who the best weapons were. And this is the setup that we deemed was the most appropriate. So enough about missiles and balance and bans and stuff. Let's get back to the action because I think we're starting to get closer here. And it looks like Lock on Greece has taken this fight a little bit further to the south than we have in the past. Teams are separated by about 80 nautical miles currently. Nobody's disconnected. Both teams are separated into 3 two-ships. Looks like the Iranian Air Force is separated into what looks like a wall, while
the flankers split off again a little bit like they did in the last time.
Yep.
But they have the same wall setup while the Greeks are coming again with the lead two ships.
More of a trail.
And the trailing 2 ship, yeah. But they haven't separated yet like they did before. And I hope they don't, because it really works towards their disadvantage every time we see it. And it was still a win last time, but it could have been the other way around as well. If the 1 versus 1s would have gone towards the favor of the IRIAF, the Greeks wouldn't have been at such a high advantage. So I wish that both teams stay together, stay cohesive, and show strength in numbers, because that's what saves you in the end a lot of times.
Separation's down to under 60 nautical miles. Should be seeing the first missile exchanges with how these previous 2 matches have gone here in about 30 miles. 30 clicks here, so roundabouts.
Yeah, we're about 50 miles separation at the moment, a little less. I mean, 30 nautical miles shots, you know, that's just crazy. That's just a waste of a missile. And in my opinion, so is, you know, it depends also on your altitude. So if you're at 45,000 feet and your bandit is at 15,000 feet and he's not being super fast, you know, be my guest, launch somewhere between 20 and 25 miles. Defensive shots gonna happen between 18 and 22 nautical miles and so on. There's also something which, you know, I would like to see more, is a very good distinction between what is an offensive shot and what is a defensive shot. Yeah. But the moment you see a guy firing more than 1 missile, you know he's only in the offensive setup, which is not always the best choice in a tactical decision. You know, sometimes when I fly against a high bandit and he's much higher than me, I will just fire a defensive shot so that he gets down from his altitude advantage and energy advantage, and then I will re-engage where the playing field is much more leveled. So, you know, we have here almost only offensive shots, which is a little bit of a pity, because remember what I said, the psychological factor of having a missile launch warning works with any pilot, no matter how experienced he is. And if you see a high bandit who gets a defensive missile, he will leave that altitude 100%. Unless it's Microvax, who will keep climbing.
Separation's down to under 20 nautical miles. So we're getting a little bit closer here, and we see the first 120B coming from AW on what I would assume is Aeolus, Hyper, Panther, or Officer. They're too close to tell the trajectory of that missile, but we see Panther and Officer putting a 120B back into the Iranian Air Force, and now Falcon and Gunslinger putting their own 120Bs out there. So the fight's getting a lot closer. Panther's now extending. Falcon, Gunslinger staying hot. Is Falcon in trouble?
He's not the fan, yeah.
He's straight down. I think he got that notched.
He's going to eat the next one, though, I think.
Yeah, but he's funny enough,
while I was talking, that first A120B we've seen by AW, and then the immediate extent afterward, that was a defensive shot.
Yes.
Right? And he broke up the battlefield through that, and you can see the IRF have much more push on the Greek guys because of 1 single defensive shot. And that's the huge difference that you have to keep in mind. Don't always play the defense.
Given what happened in the initial engagement, Officer has become separated from the rest of his team, and I'd like to see the Iranian Air Force, mainly Falcon and Hawk, take advantage of this separation that we see out of Officer. He's separated from Aeolus by about 7 nautical miles.
Falcon just launched on Aeolus, you know, so again...
But again, that could be that defensive shot of keeping him defensive so that they can capitalize if they see Officer
you can see his
separated.
His nose is pushing on Aeolus, so he's chasing him, and only Hawk is aware of Officer, while actually Officer should be Falcon's target, you know.
Exactly.
If Falcon would just snap left, he could bag him so easily with IRF pushing him into him, but Falcon is simply not aware of Officer.
This is the tunnel vision effect that you talked about earlier, where when you're in a really high stakes competitive environment, you get hyper focused on the person you're trying to kill and everything else disappears. And because of that, Falcon isn't aware of where Officer is.
And he's just wasting missiles because all those guys are running away. You know, any AIM-120 that you fire outside of 5 nautical miles in DCS today is very unlikely to hit, okay? So if you 4, 3, sometimes even 3 nautical miles on a 6, if the guy is fast enough, the AIM-120 will not get him, which is ridiculous, really. But
look at
that's how it is.
How aggressive the Iranian Air Force is being. Almost everyone from Lock-on Greece is now cold with the... And now we do see Falcon going defensive because he got the pimple warning from the 120B.
Yep.
Yeah. There's
Sorry, I missed that one.
There's first blood being drawn. One of the Greek guys got shot down. I think this was Panthea. Yeah.
It was indeed.
Saf, for example, if you look, he's very up north. He's been absolutely useless. And again, I don't mean that negative towards the pilot, but from a tactical perspective, he's rendering himself useless to the team. You know, when you're that far up front from your guys and everybody's RTB, you just turn around and at least give them one, you know, active missile defensive shot so that your guys have that small Officer got taken down, yeah. And the Greek guys, by this overextending thing they're doing again here, are letting themselves being pushed basically off the edge of the battle plate, you know. Hawks firing on Marine, which also looks like, and again here, Gunslinger could just snap left where he's not aware of Marine. He could cut him off and simply fire in his face. AW, a very long AIM-7 here on Aeolus, that is also a completely wasted missile. And then also the 27ER that was fired on TAF. And again, you see that TAF is separating further and further out from their guys. And this is a very bad situation because you are not able to help in time when you're that separated. Yeah.
Now, to talk, I'm going to go back to the AWs.
Oh, is it going to run off energy?
Aeolus is going to eat that. He's in trouble. And he does get hit. But he's still up.
He's still up. Gunslinger might take that. Yeah, boom. He capitalized on that. So he got lucky there. And now he's got AW, but he's gonna miss. Hawk and Hyper here are almost getting merged, and Hawk got killed by Hyper. So again, in the 1 versus 1, they brought more energy in the Greek guys, and they got lucky there that although they were so badly separated and the situational awareness, you know, you can see that when you recommit into a missile like that, your SA is not at your highest, but he got lucky and he made the best out of it.
Well, and you may not even get a missile warning at that point because when you recommit, you're effectively putting your RWR off axis, and you're not, the RWR may not even warn you.
No, Tef's gonna bite it. Oh, he got lucky.
It hits him.
Yeah, and he hit the Falcon.
Sneaky R73 coming on Hyper now.
Also, no flares, in return.
He's in trouble. He gets splashed. They
but it was a trade.
They traded.
So we're down to a 2v2, and what I thought was going to be an Iranian Air Force dominated match.
They are launching on a dead guy. That's 3 AIM-120s on a dead guy we don't have on the map.
So let's check their weapons real quick.
Those are all wasted missiles, you know. Also
Challenger 2 AIM-7, 2 AIM-9s.
Challenger is in a bad situation now. If Aeolus and TAF have the situational awareness, they can clam him very nicely, but Aeolus now has to commit to AW.
But Aeolus is damaged, so we don't know the state of his systems, what's going on. We see 2 merges, SAF, Challenger, and AW, and Aeolus. Aeolus is in a lot of trouble. I think he's dead. Yep.
Boom. There he goes. And we have a merge. Look at the merge. Challenger and SAF are being merged.
And Challenger is in a very advantageous position, coming down from altitude, and Saf has no idea that he's all over his 6.
Saf needs to really pull hard into him, or that misses. It's gonna
need to flare. Need to flare.
Connected.
I think that's it. We see the wings come off of Saf, and that's all she wrote.
That's it. It turned, then it turned again, and then it turned again, and our IRIAF came out on the upper hand there, which actually you know, I'm happy for them, but on the other hand, there was a small window for the Greek guys to really capitalize on it, and then they just, because they were so separated, they couldn't help each other effectively, and they didn't capitalize on that initial upper hand they had, which is a pity. I would have wished it to them. I wish it, of course, to both teams to win, but I think for the first half of this round, Greek guys were on the upper hand, and then it swung around again. Alright, as always in the last match, of course, they are demanding a land, but an RTB, but I think this is going to be very easy for the IRIAF guys to fly home to base and land safely.
I think Panther's asking if they have enough fuel.
Yeah, if you have a two-ship like that and the match was that quick, you know, I would simply give them the RTB. But then again, you know, you're always hoping. Maybe they don't. So I totally understand that people are demanding the RTB, especially in the very last match. Because, you know, it's much better to take away both 1 point than to give more points to the other team and take away 0 points yourself. So.
Another feature of the Mirage, which was really useful last match, is that it has an autopilot for approach. As soon as you capture the ILS localizer, you just push a button and it just like puts you down on approach basically onto the runway, which was very useful with all that bloody haze.
But yeah, happy to see 3 rounds and happy to see the Greek guys win that round. I think, you know, I mean, both teams had their up moments and their down moments. Both teams did very similar mistakes. We have seen problem with situational awareness. We've seen problems with missile management, like Microvex said, you know, pointing out, firing 3 AIM-120Bs on a dead guy. That also is due to poor situational awareness. And again, please everybody be aware when I say poor SA, I don't want to pick on pilots because everybody who's flying there is doing a great job. It's just by educational value. So, you know, this is what then is the outcome of it. And losing 3 missiles sometimes, you know, can make a difference in the end. The IRAF in the end, I think, came out as the strongest squadron, especially in the first round. I think it was very decisive. It was a very decisive win for the IRAF. The second round went not in their favor. It went in the favor of the Greek guys. It wasn't such a decisive win, but the Greek guys, I think, were much better in the 1 versus 1s in terms of their energy management. And now, basically, the Greek guys fell apart a little bit, and the energy management and the situational awareness of the IRAF guys was better in the second half, while in the first half they got dragged into some hairy situations. And again, Greeks would have been able to capitalize on that if they would not have been extending as much as they've been. So yeah, it was a great show by both squadrons in my opinion, and I hope everybody enjoyed the fighting.
Completely agree. So lock on Greece, team that wasn't necessary to have the other team fly all the way back. So we're going to take a short break. We're going to have our first interview of the 8th Squadron, which is the English is, I'm calling them the English as a second language, because that's what I understand that they're trying to do. They're trying to make DCS multiplayer more accessible for
the
Spanish population, for anybody that speaks Spanish, whether that be in Spain itself, Mexico, Latin America, South America, anywhere around the world. So we're going to get stuff set up for them. It'll be just a couple minutes. I'm going to throw the back. I'll actually throw one of the fan videos back on, and then I'll put the Be Right Back screen on, and I'll catch you guys back here in just a few.
Gonna deafen myself in TeamSpeak then.
All right, guys, we're back. This time, well, first off, I'd like to congratulate both teams in that awesome SATAL match, Lock on Greece and the Iranian Air Force. Iranian Air Force taking it 2 matches to 1. And that was every match that we've done. I thought, you know, honestly, initially when we did this whole thing with SATAL, that I was going to get sick of doing these broadcasts. But as it's turned out, as soon as this one ends, I start looking forward to next Saturday because they're a ton of fun to interact with both the teams, watch the teams fly, interact with the community, and it's been what I look forward to in life. I don't know if that's sad or shameful, but it's a lot of fun for me to do. I hope you guys have just as much fun watching. But for right now, I'm here joined by what we saw previously, Alex and Simon, but I'm also joined now by Black Pearl, Red Raptor, and Esparza from the 8th Squadron, and they're going to tell you a little bit about what they're about here real quick. Then we're going to jump to a video, and then I've got some questions and stuff so you guys can get a better understanding of what they do, what they're offering, and then we can take a few questions from the community, and then we'll continue on. So, 8th guys, if you'd like to say hi, what you guys are about, and then we'll jump to a video here real quick. So, go ahead.
Hello guys, how you doing?
Hello, and thank you for inviting.
This is the 8th Squadron. We are a Latin American squadron of DCS, and we've been practicing our flights, we've been learning as a community, because our objective is to grow community not only in the US, but in Latin America with all the people who speak Spanish, because we are a lot of guys who also want to learn how to fly DCS.
That's very awesome to hear. Shall we jump to the video, or you guys want to tell a little bit more about it? Where are you guys from? Are you from one country from Latin America, all over Latin America?
Okay.
We can go jump to the video if you want,
and then we'll go to the next thing. So here's the video, guys. I'll have their Facebook page and stuff when we come back. So just give it a second. Here's the video of what they're about, or an introduction. There's no words. It's really just a fan video, but gives you an idea of the 8th Squadron. We'll get more when we get back. Enjoy. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. That was a short video put together by Black Pearl of the 8th Squadron. I've got a few questions for them just so that you guys have a better understanding of who they are, what they do, and we'll get into it. So if you guys want to go through the introduction real quick again, who you are, how long you've been flying, what the 8th Squadron is, and then we can continue from there.
Sure. So first of all, we are going to talk a little bit in Spanish, a few words just for the people who is watching the stream and are for Latin America as well. So here is Black Pearl, who is going to talk about the 8th Squadron.
Sí, gracias por la invitación. Black Pearl soy yo. Bueno, básicamente nosotros formamos el 8º Escuadrón de Combate. Es un escuadrón que tiende preferencia a tener digamos, pilotos latinoamericanos, pero también tenemos pilotos que hablan inglés. O sea, nosotros también nos manejamos con lo que es el idioma inglés. Hace mucho algunos estamos volando desde el Locón, desde lo que era el Locón, así que bueno, tenemos una larga trayectoria. Si bien el escuadrón hace 2 años recién está formado, los pilotos que lo conforman vienen volando desde el Locón en adelante.
So Esparza, can you give us a breakdown of for those of us that don't speak Spanish, of what exactly Black Pearl was saying during that time?
Sure. For all of you who don't speak Spanish, because I think almost all of you speak English. So what Black Pearl just said is that we are a Latin American squadron that has about 2 years, and we are a squadron that is trying to make the community grow for all the Latin Americans who want to fly, not only DCS, but any other simulation. And we are doing our best to invite them to our squadron, to make them fly with us and to learn together.
So questions that I have.
Sorry.
Oh, go ahead, Black Pearl.
No, quería agregar de que, bueno, una de las preguntas que me habías hecho también era con cuántos miembros contamos. Tenemos una gran cantidad de miembros. O sea, por suerte el 8º Escuadrón de Combate hace 2 meses tiene su propio servidor, en el cual nos da la oportunidad de estar entrenando a diario. Tenemos una domination que estamos armando nosotros básicamente, y eso nos dio la oportunidad no solamente a ingresar, digamos, no me salen las palabras correctas, a tener más participación día a día como escuadrón, sino que además la comunidad, la gente se vaya acercando más por medio de Facebook o por medio de Level, que voy a estar hablando dentro de un ratito, y formar parte de esto que, bueno, estamos intentando hacer, que donde la gente de Latinoamérica tenga un punto en común en donde poder compartir esa pasión que tiene por volar.
So what Just Black said is very quickly, what Just Black said is that we have 37 members right now actively flying in the simulator and our squadron. So we are trying to invite more people to fly with us, because we have our own server with all the guys flying and learning, and yeah, it's pretty cool. So if you guys speak Spanish and want to fly with us, you can join us. We also try to speak in English when we can, so yeah.
I personally think this is an awesome thing to be brought to the community, and I think we need more of it to make it not just that multiplayer needs to be in English. I think it should be really in any language, but it's cool that these communities exist to help people make DCS more accessible for people that think that, you know, I don't speak English very well, I can't really partake in stuff like that. So just the fact that you guys are helping people with this, to me, is awesome. So kudos to you. Congrats for everything that you've done. And I mean, you guys already have 37 members, so that's awesome.
Yeah,
that's those 37 are active members. We have more than that, but 37 are the ones who actively fly with us.
Yes.
Wow, that is a really great number. There's very, very few squadrons in DCS can boast with 37 active members. That's very special. There's a question that I would have, because of course we met prior to this interview, and you guys noticed to me something, told me something that I found very, very cool, and that's, how do you train brevity? Do you train it in Spanish or do you train it in English?
No, we do it in English. Yeah, we do it in English because when we learn the documentation for every aircraft, usually it's in English. So we try to speak English when we are doing brevity code, So our members as well try to learn these codes and try to speak, not in English, everything, but they try to speak at least the brevity code in English. And it's better for everyone because when they go to a multiplayer server, they are ready to fly with, for example, American guys or European guys or whoever is speaking in English.
Sí, sí, sí. En ese sentido, así seamos 3 latinoamericanos volando, lo que es el Brevity Code se acostumbra a usarlo en inglés porque en esto de lo que es el DC World, en esto de que es lo que es la aviación, es el idioma universal, eso es Brevity. No es lo mismo decir copiado o afirmativo que decir copy, por dar un ejemplo, o el takeoff o el airborne. Son cosas que se trata de inculcar ni bien empiezan los pilotos a volar, a entrenar con nosotros, para que ya lo absorban y sea una cosa de todos los días.
That's right. So you want to go to the next question?
Maybe you just want to recap quickly what Black Pro said?
Oh, it's just an overview of what I just said, but what he said
so
is
this time it was the other way around. Gotcha.
Yeah, it was kind of the other way.
Yeah, good. So you guys are also doing training tutorials and you have a YouTube channel for that, is that correct?
Sí, así es. Bueno, yo soy el propietario de un canal de YouTube, se llama Level. En Level, la verdad, intenté hacer tutoriales de un montón de cosas, pero lo que más impactó, lo que más hizo crecer el canal, fueron los tutoriales de DC World. Trato de abarcar todos los módulos y trato de explicar, digamos, o sea, hay tutoriales que te enseñan a aprender el avión y ya. Yo lo que trato es enseñarte a aprender el avión, o a manejarlo, mejor dicho, el módulo, pero entendiendo lo que estás haciendo. Es decir, ¿por qué tienes que tocar este botón? Bueno, este botón hace esto, pero porque si tocas este botón hace esto otro. O sea, convengamos que los módulos vienen con un manual bastante extenso y no todo el mundo tiene las ganas o el tiempo para leerlos. Bueno, lo que intento de hacer es no solamente una guía tutorial a conciencia para que la gente entienda por qué está haciendo las cosas, sino además que sirva como referencia para los pilotos mismos del escuadrón que adquieren nuevos módulos o se animan a probar algo diferente.
So what Black just said is that he has a channel, he's the owner of Level channel in YouTube, and he is making tutorials for people to learn how to fly DCS modules, but not only how to fly them, because you can learn how to start up, for example, a helicopter or a plane, but you won't understand how to fly correctly, and you won't understand the plane overall. So what he's doing is making an exhaustive tutorials where he teaches how to fly and he teaches every part of the module so people in Spanish can learn and can join to fly with us. And not only with us, but to fly the modules themselves.
I think that's I think that's a very good thing, you know, I mean, that you have tutorials that are not only in English, so people who don't understand English can get a hang of, and I've been watching a few of those tutorials. I mean, my Spanish is very rudimentary, as you guys know, but what I've seen is really great. So everybody, we posted that link in the chat, and everybody subscribe who is Spanish speaking, who's watching here, who wants to watch Spanish tutorials. It's a young channel, so don't get pushed away by the little subscriptions they have yet. That's why we do this also, to make them known to you guys and that you know where you can find these Spanish speaking tutorials. So please everybody subscribe and give them a thumbs up for that. I think it's a really great thing they have going on. Go ahead, Malta.
Thank you.
I was just going to say is there anything else that you guys want to talk about or touch on? Black Pearl, Red Raptor, Esparza, before we bring this to a close?
Well, ¿quieres decir algo?
Bueno, no, muchas gracias por la oportunidad y espero poder encontrarnos en el futuro en el aire. Muchas gracias.
Sí, bueno, yo invitar obviamente A todos aquellos que estén dando vueltas sin saber lo que es unirse a un escuadrón o sin saber lo que es volar con gente, las invitaciones, está el link en Facebook del octavo escuadrón de combate, como digo yo en mis videos, están abiertas. Simplemente tienen que animarse, presentarse y nada, están compartiendo el mismo gusto que ustedes con un montón de gente que la verdad le apasiona esto de volar. Traducirlo, Esparza, si querés, y ya.
Well, so what Black said is just mainly for Spanish speakers, but well, what he said is that you want to join us, you are welcome to do it. We don't need anything else than you come to our Discord channel or WhatsApp or any other way you can communicate with us, and we can join you to our squadron to fly with us. So that's it for us. Thank you very much and see you later.
Yeah, thank you, Moltar, thank you, Aaron Mike, for this opportunity. I see in the sky.
See you in the sky, guys. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your outstanding community work. We really appreciated it very much. And I hope you see you at least in Red Flag Rumble, where the Vegan is taking part. So sign up, guys. We want to see some 08 guys flying. And see you in the skies.
See you. Thank you for all.
See you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys. See ya.
I'd like to say thanks again to the 8th Squadron for coming in. I think it's awesome what they're doing. I really want to see more of that coming to DCS and all of that going in the future. Make sure you click on their Facebook links that were linked earlier in chat. Make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel if you have any interest in Spanish tutorials. I'm going to throw us real quick to the Heat Blur video. It's the one that came out not too long ago. I think it was a few days ago, with Alex, who's here with us in chat as Iron Mike. And who were you with, Iron Mike? You guys were doing some stuff with the Jester AI. And the video in particular is the dogfight that they were in the F-14. But that's what we're going to watch. Iron Mike, who were you with?
Yeah, it's Grayson Froberg. He's also known as Grey Wolf from the Death from Above Squadron to the DCS community. He's the voice actor of the Jester AI, and I have the huge privilege to be directing it. So the update that we had from Heatblur about the Jester AI was behind the scenes view of how we do the recording process. So what you're gonna see here is not the entire thing. Remember, this video was not to showcase how the F-14 dogfights, but it is also a good insight in how multi-crew is already working to an absolutely amazing level. There's no glitches. There's of course, you know, on each release there will be some humps here and there, but so far in any scene that I've flown, I haven't seen a multi-crew like that. So show the video, and then I think we can welcome Swither to the chat and have a general chat about the Jester AI.
Yep. So guys, again, here's a short video. It's about 2 minutes, 2 or 3 minutes. It's just the dogfight that Iron Mike and Grayson were in the F-14, showcasing what's currently available in the F-14's Rio and backseat.
I don't got him.
Do you have one visual?
11 o'clock, 11 o'clock. He's
11
passing by our
o'clock,
left side. Oh! There's two of them.
Alright, we got any Phoenixes?
Negative.
Alright, spot the other. Where's the other guy?
I don't got him. 8 o'clock, 8 o'clock. Hi, he's coming down.
Alright, I need to know where do you see the second guy?
Negative, I don't got him. He's still back there.
Give me a couple of no-can-dos.
No can do.
Give us an aim 9. Give us an aim 9.
No can do. Oh, he's gonna crash into the ground. Oh my god, he was so close. There's one on our 6. He's maneuvering for a shot. 2 o'clock high. 3 o'clock high. Oh god. I think I'm gonna throw up. You got him, you got him. Come on, come on. Oh man. Get him. Nice shot, man. Good kill. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Oh, Jesus! How did we live through that?
Give me one. Boga is friendly. KC-130 tanker.
Bogey is friendly. KC-130 tanker.
Roger that. Boga is friendly. KC-130 tanker. Let's look for other bogies. You can unlock him.
Roger.
Just give me a bogey unlocked.
Bogey unlocked.
Or contact unlocked.
Contact unlocked. Bogey left 015 for 30, Angels 20.
And you can give me the call, switching PDSTT.
Switching PDSTT. Got a lock.
Yeah, go ahead, launch Fox 3.
Fox 3.
Missile missed. Give me a missile missed.
Missile missed. Splash Bandit. Nice kill.
And welcome back, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed that short video on from the perspective of the Rio, from Grayson's perspective while flying with Alex, aka Iron Mike. I'm here joined by, and have been previously throughout this stream, by Iron Mike. And now we're joined by Swither.
Hello.
Who, if I understand it, you do a lot with the flight model and the Jester. With
Yes.
Player, is that correct?
Yeah, so basically my responsibility is, well, I'm lead software engineer on the project, but my main responsibilities are Jester and flight modeling. I do a bunch of other systems modeling as well, but those two are my main areas, so to say.
So real quick, before we jump into the meat of this, I'm going to open the giveaway, and I think Iron Mike says, do I need to turn him up or down, Alex?
A little bit up, I would say.
Okay, I'll turn him up. But I'm going to open the giveaway. So to enter the giveaway, well, it should just tell you. You're going to use !Heapler to enter. It's going to be open for 5 minutes. Once it closes, so you can't rejoin. You get 1 entry per person. Have at it. We're going to draw the winner after the interview, and one lucky one of you is going to walk away with his very own Heapler module. Obviously, if you get an F-14, it's going to come at a later date because it hasn't come out yet. But back to this, Iron Mike, I don't know a lot about the F-14, so I'm going to let you kind of lead this discussion. Once you guys feel like you've gone after everything, I can then feed you guys some questions from the community. But I'm going to let you lead this with Swither, so take it away.
Absolutely, Swither. So I think what's a bit interesting, we have 2 of your main topics. Of course, Swither knows everything about the F-14 there is to know, second to none. But I think we can kick it off a little bit with Jester, since we've seen here the recording process, and everybody who wants to know more about the recording process, we will later on also post the link to the update. You can find it on our homepage and also on the D forums. But maybe let's have a look also behind the process of how Jester is being coded and the technical aspect of Jester. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about that, Swither.
Sure, Alex. So basically, well, I guess it's a very wide question. There's a lot of aspects to it. And I guess it's a matter of how deep we want to go, but in general, I would say that we use something called behavior trees to have Jester basically set up the different behavioral aspects and like the logic Jester wants to really, all the things he wants to do in different kind of situations in a big tree, and then that tree kind of determines what state he is in and what he's doing and so on. So, I mean, that's like the core logic of things, and that's really where in that tree he is at the moment, what he's doing and so on. It's really depending on external factors such as who's nearby, is it only friendlies, or do we have enemies nearby, or do we have enemies somewhere else? Are we landing, or are we doing in-air refueling, or whatever kind of, like all of these all these kind of external events. And then on the other hand, we have the whole aspect of making him sound the right way, right? So, you know, figuring out how do we put all these different phrases that we have recorded together and make them sound natural and these things. That's a big part of our effort. And I think there, as you saw in the video, I think one of the most important aspects is to have a lot of variation. So we don't just want him to say affirmative, you know, 1,000 times in a mission. We want to have like 1,000 different ways for him to say that, or at least 100 different ways for him to say that. I think variation and making it fit together in a decent way, I think that's the major, that's the main drivers for that side of things. And then of course there's like the whole interaction side of things. How do the player interact with the Jester? And that's something we've really been trying to make as smooth as possible. We haven't really been ready to show you anything of that yet, but we're quite close. And we have mentioned before, and like the main way to interact with Jester is using a contextual radial menu, as we call it. If you have played like Battlefield or a lot of other games, you will recognize it as a like the comm menu, for instance, from Battlefield, where you get like a radial menu where you can select different options and so on. And the nice thing is that it will be directly mappable to an 8-directional switch, which makes it useful directly from a joystick or a throttle and so on. But then also we will have in addition to the contextual menu, so the contextual one is really, it changes what options you have based on what you're doing right now. So in a dogfight, the options you have will be rather like to ask Jester to go into vertical scan mode, for instance. Whereas if you're in a BVR situation, it would be rather be like, okay, so lock on to that guy or whatever, or change scan up or whatever, you know, these kind of options. So in addition to that contextual menu, we will have more a general menu where you can do all kinds of things. But I think for that one, it would be more like that's something you will only use in very specific situations. So it's not the common use case, I would say. Yeah.
Thank you. No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, I guess I can just add one last thing. I mean, in regards to how to interface with Jester, and I think that our design philosophy is to have him be as human as is reasonable. So we don't want it to be we don't want the interaction to be in a way where you just tell him to do that or do that, like push that button, because then it's more of a, you know, arm extension that allows you to push buttons in the rear cockpit. And I mean that doesn't really make sense. You want him to figure out the things that he would understand from what you're doing. Like if you're in a dogfight, if you're doing that or whatever, he should, if the real Ryu would understand that this is what you would do, then we want him to do that without you telling him to do that. So he will be doing a bunch of stuff in there in the back that you're not telling him to do, and I think that will create a lot of interesting dynamics.
There was a very interesting question in the chat, is how does Jester activate or deactivate when another player enters the rear part of the cockpit or exits the rear?
So yeah, I mean, he activates or deactivates. And the thing is that he is actually really flipping all the switches and stuff that you would do if you were sitting in the backseat yourself. So that means that if you jump into the backseat and Jester is hence switched off, that means that the switches will be in the right position, so you can take it from there. And the same if you leave, then Jester will take it from where you were. So I think that's a quite, I think that would be a quite smooth transition in that sense.
So that's very cool to have this seamless transition from flying with a Jester AI, and then suddenly your Rio gets disconnected. You know, you had a human Rio, and boom, Jester is in there again, and you're not lost on the server or in an event by being alone in the aircraft. I find that very cool. Now, when we say he's switching the switches and you say you want him to be human, we want him to be human as possible, how does it work? Does Jester simply know, okay, there's a bandit, and he switches the switch blindly, or does he have to look at the switch? How does that work?
So so this depends on the situation. So some switches, you know, in real life, your backseater would, you know, find them by muscle memory, basically. I mean, you don't look at the keyboard when you type, or I guess some people do. I don't. And it's the same kind of situation there. I mean, some of the switches, we've heard stories from some of our subject matter experts where they actually put, you know, tape on some of the switches to be able to recognize which ones were which and so on, yeah, without looking. But then some of the switches, I mean, if it's like a knob that you rotate or something between different modes, you might need to be able to actually look at it in order to find the right mode and so on. I mean, of course, and then he will look at it. So it will take his eyes off the sky or off the screen and so on. So that's all things that's part of making him, you know, have the same limitations as a human being, basically.
That's very nice. So he will not be an Uber thing. He's not gonna be something where you can cheat with on a server. He's not gonna give actually a proper advantage over a human Rio. Would you say that Jester will be better or a human Rio will be better? I mean, it's kind of an odd question because, of course, for us, Jester is much better. But you know,
to be honest, I think in many ways, I guess Jester will be more consistent than many players. But I think that's like what a real, you know, if you had a real Rio in your backseat that has, you know, been practicing his job for years, I mean, that would be the same situation, right? So I think it will be, you know, if you have a good player in your backseat, that will definitely be better by far. But if you have someone who just does it like, you know, every once in a while and so on, I'm guessing Jester will be better. I don't know. I mean, Mike, you've been flying the thing for quite a while. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Absolutely. I think, you know, when the experience of the players grows, in the beginning, Jester will absolutely be up front of them. But the great thing about Jester is that you can basically outlearn him through the human aspect, through that you're not locked to the abilities, of course, like an AI is. And the more you learn, the more you will become first equal and then better than Jester, in my opinion. And not only that, you have a much more dynamic interaction between two human beings than you would have between a human and an AI. Although I have to say that already in the state that Jester is in, it is extremely dynamic to interact with him, and it is great fun. So I think, you know, there's going to be a little bit of both. And if, of course, in single player, it makes the Tomcat accessible for anybody who, you know, who cannot fly multiplayer, who doesn't have a Rio around. But with a very experienced Rio, I think they will outwit Jester. So I have no fear at all that he's going to be some kind of a cheating device, you know, on a multiplayer server and in a multiplayer event. To the contrary.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, of course, when Skynet launches, I mean, then we're doomed anyway. But until then, I think human players will be able to beat Jester.
Absolutely. Maybe we can.
I guess. Yeah, sorry. I guess I can add one more thing. I mean, as we mentioned, we've mentioned it a lot of times before, but it's worth mentioning again that for early access, Jester's features will be fairly limited. He will still be really useful and make single player fun, but it will be far from our our Jester end game, so to say.
Yeah, absolutely. Jester will continue evolving even after that, and I think that is something which I experienced in Heatblur when we now work on the Vigan as well. You know, we don't finish a module and then leave it. We keep evolving it. We keep adding units. We keep completing the universe for the player to play in with that module, and that's something that is so exciting, because sometimes we see modules, you know, they get brought to a certain part and then they are just left at the side, which is kind of you know, a pity sometimes. But you guys can definitely be sure that, you know, with the Heatblur modules, they will continue evolving, and then more and more and more features gonna get added over the time. There was another interesting question here in the chat. Is Jester looking at your 6 only when you're locked, or is he sometimes looking at your 6 to make sure that plane is not being chased?
Yeah, so again, this is totally dependent on where in this big behavioral tree that I mentioned, like state machine behavior tree thing that we have going on, where in that you are. That determines what he's doing. In most situations, he will, like even in a BVR situation, he will like spend some time looking at the screen, then he will spend some time scanning, you know, the sky on his right side, then maybe look a little bit more on the screen, then maybe scan the left side of him a little bit. Now, if you talk to, you know, when you talk to our subject matter experts, and they say, I mean, a big part of what they did was, you know, keeping their heads on a pivot, you know, and really scanning the sky all the time. So of course, yeah, he will be looking behind him even if he's not locked up, or so. I mean, how would he otherwise know if he's been, you know, if he's been trapped or something? I don't know.
Can Jester black out?
At the moment, he can't, but he will for sure before early access. Yes.
And is it so that he blacks out with the pilot at the same time, or was it so that the Rio was more prone to blackouts and G-locks than the pilot? Is that being considered?
I haven't considered this yet myself. This is something that I've been thinking a bit about. If you know, the simple way to go would be to just have him black out when the pilot does, right? So I think that might be what we do for early access, but as I said before, Jester is something we really want to, you know, extend and make smarter and smarter, and using future products and so on as well. So I think it's a big part of the big underlying tech that we really want to make use of in many years to come. So of course, that's also one thing that we would like to improve.
So on the same vein here, when we're talking about blacking out, kind of a little different. Can Jester make mistakes?
Yes. Right now there are some things which are, you know, probability based, so there's a slight chance that he would do that instead of that, for instance. And you know, in general the situation is quite dynamic, so things will miss, things won't work, like these kind of things. But it's definitely something we will want to dive more into in the future, you know, kind of figure out how we can make him even more human, because as everyone knows, always the human in the loop that causes most problems, to be honest.
This is also a little bit depending on what kind of equipment is he using and how he is using. You know, for example, if you have a PDSTT lock, which is pulse Doppler single target track, then you know that lock is much more reliable than, for example, if you would lock somebody in a TWS mode. So I'm thinking here that Jester will, of course, you know, the Jester coding will consider that as well. So is that right?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. And there's I think that the level of fidelity that our systems or weapons and weapon systems guys have been able to put in for the AUG-9 is just amazing. You know, with how what that radar system actually does when it tries to lock something up and these kind of things. We've seen some stuff like that in the F-18 now, but before that we really didn't have any radar system with that kind of fidelity in the game. So I think just having that makes things, you know, it won't work every time and these kind of things. So that will of course affect Jester's behavior as well.
One guy was asking, can you make Jester learning with us by flying, or it's just too difficult?
This is definitely something we could do. I mean, there's a lot of machine work in machine learning and so on, but to be honest, I think that's further in the future for us. It's not really something that adds a lot of value in the immediate future, and it would require a lot of R&D from our side. So it's definitely something we want to look into at some point, but it's just much further down the roadmap.
Not in early access. One question that keeps coming up all the time, of course, is can you fly the Rio in single player, and do you have like a Jester pilot AI or Maverick pilot AI?
You can fly the Rio seat, but you don't have a Jester pilot. So what you basically would do is that, I mean, you have the basic autopilot modes if you're flying along, and then, okay, yeah, we're going straight, let's jump in the backseat and do some fiddling with the radar system. I would usually just enable the attitude hold or the altitude hold modes, maybe even the heading hold if I want to do that, and then jump in the backseat, and that, I mean, that works quite well. At this time, we don't have a plan to make a pilot AI. That might change. It's not a priority at the moment.
Roger. There was another interesting question. If you're stuck in a flat spin and can't reach the ejection handle, will Jester eject for you?
So there will definitely be situations where Jester will eject, and if the pilot will, eject with him or not, that depends on the setting of a lever in the rear cockpit, actually. So I guess Jester can decide. We'll see.
Another interesting question here, and I think now we can also move away a little bit from Jester in general. Will the radar use a Vigan type raycaster radar or something more conventional? You touched upon that briefly before that, but I think the radar that's done by Gyrovac and the systems, how they're modeled in the AUG9 in general, is something yet to be seen in any sim worldwide, in my opinion. Maybe you can explain a little bit on that.
Yeah, for sure. Sorry. Let's call him Gyrovac from now on.
Okay.
No, but yeah. So basically, it uses a mix between what we have in. We developed a lot of really nice tech for the Vigan and with the pulse radar system with raycasting and stuff. And we are using a lot of that in the F-14 as well, because those in real life, those systems work like that in a sense. So if you look at the DDD, the raw radar display, or it can be used as somewhat raw radar display and use it in pulse Doppler mode, for instance, you will see like terrain reflections and stuff on that. So, and that is based on the tech we developed for the Vigan. So yeah. And then, I mean, there's a lot of like things going on in the whole radar simulation and so on.
There's one question I have. I know that with the early variants of the Fox Hunter radar on the Tornado ADV, basically in TWS the problem was that they technically, like the feature was implemented in the software to have like up to, I don't know, 16 or 24 tracks, but basically the computation power couldn't keep up with doing the track calculations. Does the AUG9 have a similar limitation that you technically can have like a number of radar tracks, but it will basically slow down as soon as you have too many of them?
So, to be honest, this is not my main area of expertise. We should ask Gyrovac about this, but I think in general, from what I understand, it should be able to track 24 targets, and it should be able to do that with the same fidelity. But yeah, I mean, you could. I guess I could forward that question, see if we can get it answered in some other form.
Oh, yeah, that would be cool.
Maybe we can move a little bit on the flight model, Swither. I have never experienced such a flight model as I experienced in the F-14. For me, it's by far the best thing that has been done. So before you have to take off here, we have, I think, another 5 minutes left. Could you maybe a little bit explain how you went about the flight model, how our SMEs react to it, and so on?
Sure. Yeah, where to start? No, but in general, the model is based on a whole bunch of wind tunnel testing and modeling done by NASA in the 60s and 70s and so on. So there's a lot of really good data in the NASA Technical Report Archive, and then of course we have the performance charts and all these kind of things. So we've had really good data available, not all from the start, but we've been able to put the things in place as we go. So yeah, I think it's just been a massive effort. I've spent 3.5 years working on it. and it's getting to a point where I think it's really fun to fly. It's just super dynamic. There's a lot of things happening. It's not on rails in any way. It's kind of, we're really trying to simulate all the different aspects of the, of the flight, flight envelope and so on. And I think that's kind of what shows. Our testers seem really happy with it. Our subject matter experts, I mean, of course they have a lot of feedback, which we are continuously working on. I think we're really close to where we want to be with it now. To be honest, if we would release it today, with the state the flight model is in now, I think most people would be really, really happy with it. We want to take it to perfection. So we're almost there. It's super. It's fun to fly, and it's just fun. I don't know. Do you have any more specific questions regarding it?
Maybe one last questions before we then move over to the Tomcat giveaway, which all the people are waiting for as well, of course. What are the intricacies of that flight model of the F-14 Tomcat? Is it an aircraft that is easy to fly, or is it an aircraft that fights you a lot? For example, is there something like, is it prone to pilot-induced oscillations and stuff like that?
There's a bunch of particularities with it. I've spent a lot of time flying it, so but basically it has a tendency to, for instance, wing rock. So it will rock back and forth if you're at high alpha. Same thing is if you're at high alpha, you will have roll reversal, which means that if you try to roll right, it will roll left. These kind of things. So there's a lot of fun things happening, which makes it really, really dynamic when you fly it. With practice, you can learn how to handle that. If you use your rudder, you can actually use rudder to roll instead and so on at high alpha. There's a lot of fun things like that. To be honest, I find it quite easy to fly, more than many other aircraft, but there's a lot of more things happening, so you have to figure out what does that actually mean, and how do I work with that kind of. In terms
what
of,
happens? No, go ahead.
Yeah, so in terms of landing on a carrier, for instance, I find it, to be honest, I find it a lot easier than an F-18. I haven't had that much time to fly the Hornet, unfortunately. It's been super fun to fly, but to be honest, I find the Hornet harder to land on carrier than the F-14, and the main reason for that is that the Tomcat has something called direct lift control, which basically means that if you're in landing configuration and you're in the groove, you pop the DLC, which means that your spoilers pop up 50% or something like that, and then you can use your thumb wheel on your stick to basically extend them more or retract them, and with that the stabilator will also move. So that means you can actually adjust your lift because you create more or less drag, and you can move up and down in the glide slope without changing your alpha, which means that you can stay on the correct angle of attack. So that makes it a lot easier to just stay in the right position in the glide slope.
So if I understand it correctly, I can basically leave my throttle at the position where it is, I can leave my stick at the position where it is, and just use the DLC slats and move up and down in an easy way to say, yeah?
Yeah, pretty much. The really cool thing with that, I mean, I guess you've all heard it be called the turkey and so on. I mean, and one big reason for that is that it has a fairly wide wings, and when you use the DLC, and from what I understand, fresh pilots, they have a tendency to use the DLC a bit too much to correct and so on, and that means that the wings were flapping up and down and so on. So that's made it look even more like a turkey, basically.
A flying bird indeed. One last question about the flight model, and then we can give away the Tomcat model for the lucky winner today. I would ask, for example, what happens if you're in a high alpha turning fight, you're doing BFM, you're at a slower speed, you're at a high alpha, and then instead of your rudder, you use your roll in order to bank left or right. What would happen in such a situation?
So basically, it will roll in the other direction, or it could even depart in the worst case scenarios, I guess.
Is there something what you can do? For example, could you turn off your roll, SAS or something like that in order to prevent that?
I think the main thing you want to do is just use, if you're at high alpha, use your rudders for roll, for instance. But I mean, you know, at that alpha, you will also be bleeding a lot of energy, so it's not the best position to be in if you're not really trying to go for that lead shot. But what you should do as well is that you should, if I'm not mistaken, you should turn off your is it roll SAS? You should turn off it, but I don't remember.
I think it's roll SAS. Yeah.
Yeah, so you should do that because that kind of decreases your departure resistance.
What, for example, is a good corner speed? Maybe that's the last question then.
It totally depends on your loadout and so on. I guess the best way to answer that is to look at your EM charts. I don't have them in my head right now, unfortunately.
But probably it would be something around 400 IAS, 350 to 400ish, between 300 400, like most aircraft, right?
Yeah, for sure. And you know, slightly below Mach, of course, and so on is always great. But yeah, or like maybe Mach 75, something like that.
Well then, go ahead, Microvex. A quick last question because Swither has to depart. Take off here again.
One quick question would be: Is there any performance envelope where the TF40 engines have an advantage over the 110s?
There is. From what I understand, this is not my main expertise. We have another guy doing the engine specifically. But basically, I think there are some situations where I think especially down low where it's better, and also from what I understand, the inlet control system was really designed to, you know, mate perfectly with the TF30s, which made it really efficient in a big part of its envelope, even if the F110s are really, you know, are the much better engines in all ways, pretty much. There's still some parts of the envelope where the TF30s will be better. But I think like the TF30s adds a lot of fun to the whole, you know, to fly the Tomcat and so on. I think there's going to be a lot of people that actually prefer flying the A as well. Systems will be slightly different, the feel will be slightly different, these kind of things. But the A will be out after the B actually. So focus right now are the F110s and the B systems, so to say.
Oh, cool, thanks.
Well, thank you, Swither, a lot for this tremendously awesome and deep insight into everything Jester flight model and behind the scenes of the F-14. I hope you guys all enjoyed it, and now let's move on to what all of you have been waiting, and I'll just give the word to Moltar, and then Swither can announce the lucky guy.
Swither, you're probably just gonna... Are you watching the stream?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're probably just going to see it in chat. It's probably just going to post it, so feel free to read it. But guys, this is... I know why you really tuned in. Nobody really cares about SATAL, so I'm just kidding. But without further ado, the winner for this giveaway of a Heapler module is...
Oh, it's Jofo87. Did I pronounce it right? Congratulations, man.
Congratulations, Jofo87. You're a lucky winner, and you can tell us today now whether you would like to have a Tomcat or a Viggen. That decision is up to you. You also have time to redecide. The difference being that the Viggen you can get immediately, and the Tomcat, of course, you will have to wait until it's released. My advice, both are awesome. But Jofo, if you're here, can you quickly give us confirm, Jofo87, you are the winner. Just type in the chat quickly, please, that you get that. Other than that, we will try to get hold of you somehow. Yeah, Jofo87, you won correctly. Congratulations again.
Now, Iron Mike, how do you want him to go about doing this? You just want him to get in contact with me or you directly?
Yeah, again,
Pick up Iron Mike in Austria. In person.
Exactly. Come to Vienna, we'll have sausage.
Oh no.
Oh no. Let's not get ballistic. Jofo, contact Malta, please. Make sure that you have an account on ED forums, because when the time comes, and let's also remember the winner from the last giveaway, which was Empirical Madman, if he's watching. So Jofo87, Empirical Madman, and the guys who will win, I will contact you then on the ED forums when the time is ripe. Just tell us, please, quickly, Jofo, would you want the Vigan or would you want the Tomcat? So that we know, because if it's the Vigan, then we will give it to you more or less immediately, or in the next 2-3 days. If it's the Tomcat, of course, you'll have to wait. Like I said, I recommend both. And please contact Malta with a PM so that he can send me then your ED Forums account and I can contact you.
Congratulations again to Jofo. I'm going to bring this out. Thank you again to the 08 Squadron and to Heapler for coming in. It's always a pleasure to have both of you. The match between Lock on Greece and the Iranian Air Force was epic. Really, it all comes to a head, and everything every week is just exciting. So honestly, it really is impossible without Heapler. So I'll just leave it at that. Without you guys and your guys' continued commitment to making this happen, it's really awesome that a third-party developer comes out and shares all this information with the community and does giveaways. And again, we really haven't had anything like this before, so this is all new. So thanks, guys. Alex, Swither, thanks again.
Hey, no worries. It's awesome to be part of these community events. It's what makes the the whole DCS world great, right?
Is there
Absolutely.
anything else, Alex, Swither, that you guys would like to say before we close this out and we go for the day and see him again next Saturday?
I would like to thank all the participants, all the viewers, of course. We do this for you, and thank you to the 08th Squadron again for the tremendous community work with the Spanish community, and very, very special thanks to Swither for being here. He's very short on time, so it's very nice of him that he cut it off of his tight schedule and was here available for you guys. We will have other giveaways in the future, and we will cover other aspects of the F-14, where other guys will come on, maybe somebody who does the engines or the radar and so on. Gyroveg, he will never forgive me that I said Gyroveg. But yeah, stay tuned, guys. I mean, it's only gonna get more awesome, and many thanks, Swither, Malta, to you, and Microvax for co-commentating, and everybody enjoy your weekend.
All right, guys, we'll leave it at there. Thanks for hanging out with us. It was a 3-hour stream, but that's all she wrote. Congratulations, Jofo, for winning that F-14 or Vigan. I didn't see which one you chose, but again, guys, thanks for coming out. You did win the Tomcat. Thanks for coming out. It's always a pleasure. I can't believe we have this many people coming out to watch. We started with 20 or 30 people. I think right now we're pushing 200, so this is eye-opening to me. This is exciting for me because I never thought people would enjoy this much. So thanks again. I'll see you guys next weekend for week 20 of SATAL. Until then, catch you next time.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.